tonight, I think. Plenty of clear skies for stargazing this evening as well. Northern Ireland as well, seeing plenty of clear skies through this evening, but it's across the east coast where we'll start to see that cloud being dragged in overnight. So that will likely linger across eastern coast through Wednesday evening and into Thursday morning as well. It's probably going to be a bit more extensive through Thursday morning compared to this morning. So a cloudier start for many more of us to come on Thursday. But across western areas, clear skies will continue to dominate, particularly parts of Western Wales, southwest England and parts of Western Scotland as well. That's where temperatures will fall away a little lower. But with the breeze and the cloud further east, temperatures holding up into double digits for many areas. So probably a bit of a cloudier start to Thursday. The cloud will start to burn back though, particularly across the east coast where we continue to see this easterly breeze bringing a slightly fresher feel to these areas compared to more western parts of the UK. But across the west, another fine and bright and sunny day with temperatures well above average into the mid-20s for some of us. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News. The latest GB News travel.
Hello, good morning. I'm Andy Hilbert with the latest on the roads across the UK for a Wednesday morning. In Leicestershire, the northbound M1 moving better now following the earlier accident. Junction 20 at Lutterworth to Junction 21 for the M69. In Kent, at the London-bound M2, a lane closed on the exit slip road due to a broken down vehicle at Junction 4 for Gillingham. And in Buckinghamshire, the clockwise M25, long delays in the lane closed due to an accident at Junction 16 for the M40. Currently on the anti-clockwise M25 in Surrey, all traffic temporarily being held due to a van fire just before Junction 6 at Godstone. And in Hampshire, the westbound M27 queuing with the lane closed due to an accident. That's at Junction 12 for the M275 for Portsmouth. And in Monmouthshire, the Severn Bridge, the M48 there eastbound, queuing with the lane closed due to an accident at Junction 2 at Chepstow to Junction 1 at Osk. That's going to affect you over the Severn Bridge there this morning from what we can see. That's the latest. You're up to date.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
So Prince Harry, apparently, Operation Bring Harry In from the Cold. Do you feel there's any truth to this?
Lots of tongues are wagging, Nana. We heard that he was at the memorial for Lord Robert Fellows, and obviously William was there as well. And so there was lots of, everyone going into overdrive. That was in Snettisham, Norfolk the other day. He wasn't going to attend, said the People, a mouthpiece of his. And I would have actually thought that maybe a lookalike had turned up. But now we have been led to believe that Harry's been talking to people from friends from his old life. And it's not that he wants to make a permanent move to the UK, so I believe. What I've heard, it's more about his reputation.
Well, he wants to have his cake and eat it by the sounds of it. I mean, obviously, no good cake it remains uneaten.
We know that the royal family is his currency. I mean, even his late mother, obviously he's almost usurped her memory, and he needs this. He needs this to make money. Of course, he raced in for Lord Robert Fellows' memorial service. So there's lots of ambiguous behaviour, and he is going to be, in New York. We call it the silly season, don't we? And we're also looking. There's lots of different stories that are coming out, but he needs to sell stuff. He's going to be in New York, and it's. We've got to remember the enormous amount of hurt and offence. I mean, exactly. Prince William absolutely reeling. Poor Princess Catherine. Spare book coming out at the most awful time. And you've got the Netflix
series.
It's absolutely, this is a rehabilitation strategy.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Morning, 9:30 on Wednesday, September the 18th. Live across the UK, this is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Good morning. So, deadly exploding pagers. At least 9 people are confirmed dead and thousands injured in a suspected Israeli attack on Hezbollah. Mark White has more.
Well, the Hezbollah terror group quite literally picking up the pieces today and vowing revenge on Israel. But are they in any position to launch any meaningful attack on Israel? Very doubtful, as they've taken a very significant pounding.
And not stopping the boat, the Prime Minister's new borders chief has admitted that smashing the gangs, that's the Labour policy, won't be enough, and that the government needs a deterrent to reduce the Channel crossings.
Well, who'd have thought it?
That, couldn't we?
Now, in an attempt to tackle the recruitment crisis in schools, teachers will be allowed to work from home for marking, reading and lesson planning. Will that make more teachers stay in such a difficult job?
And the inquiry continues into how the killer nurse Lucy Letby got away with the crimes she's been found guilty of as the families search for answers.
And Kate returns to work. The Princess of Wales has had her first official royal engagement since undergoing chemotherapy. Good to have you back. And a bit of breaking news this morning. Really a story that got a lot of traction, a lot of publicity. This was the mother, the wife, the businesswoman from Chester who was arrested for posting misinformation on Twitter relating to the attacker of the Southport stabbings. We're going to bring you the very latest update on that. We've just heard no further action for Bernie Spofforth. I think that is probably a case of common sense prevailing, but we'll look at the detail in just a minute. Don't go anywhere, gbnews.com/You're Safe. First, the very latest news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you from the newsroom just after 11:30. The top story of the day, the Foreign Office is urging calm heads and de-escalation after hundreds of simultaneous explosions across Lebanon and parts of Syria. 9 people were killed and thousands injured in what's believed to be a remote attack targeting communications devices. Hezbollah militants and the Iranian ambassador were among those wounded as tensions between Israel and Hezbollah continue to rise. The Foreign Office is now urging British citizens in Lebanon to leave, warning they could be trapped in a war zone. Some airlines have also started suspending flights to Tel Aviv and Tehran in response to the escalating violence in the region. Here, inflation remained above the 2% target, unchanged at 2.2% last month, with new data out this morning. Prices in hospitality, holidays and hotels possibly boosted by the final leg of Taylor Swift's UK tour are driving inflation, with the inflation in the services sector up to 5.6% in August. Treasury Chief Darren Jones says years of sky-high inflation continues to put strain on British families, despite the slower rise. He added the government is determined to fix the foundations of the economy to ease the pressure on households. Experts, though, believe the figure points to the Bank of England keeping interest rates at 5% tomorrow. Former Scottish First Minister Alex Salmond says every nation deserves a second chance on the 10th anniversary of Scotland's failed independence bid. He's predicting the country will be independent within the next decade. Reflecting on the 2014 campaign, he admits mistakes in the final week of that campaign, but doubts a different strategy would have changed the outcome. Since the vote for support, the independence campaign has remained largely static, frustrating many, including Salmond, who blames the current Scottish government for a lack of action. He insists the push for independence must accelerate and says that Scotland doesn't have time on its hands. Ban the IRGC, that's the call from Robert Jenrick, as he argues the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps should be labelled a terrorist group. The Conservative leadership candidate wrote in the Daily Telegraph saying Labour had once promised to take action but has failed to deliver. Jenrick argues the IRGC is the world's chief sponsor of terror and that cracking down on it would, he says, help tackle affiliated groups. The Foreign Secretary David Lammy has introduced sanctions against the group but hasn't moved to prescribe it as a terrorist organisation. The public inquiry into the crimes of convicted child serial killer nurse Lucy Letby is continuing today, with the parents of some of her victims giving evidence. The investigation is scrutinising how Letby, now serving 15 life sentences, was able to murder 7 babies and injure 7 more while she worked as a nurse at the Countess of Chester Hospital. The mother of child D told the inquiry that having CCTV in her daughter's hospital room could have prevented her murder. The inquiry is now looking into whether all neonatal units across England should now install CCTV. The hearings are set to continue until early 2025, with findings expected by late autumn. And finally, posting voice recordings online could lead to scam attempts, according to a leading bank. Starling Bank says AI voice cloning technology is being used to imitate people's voices, allowing scammers to target family members for money. Almost half of those surveyed had no idea such scams even existed, while 1 in 12 said they would send money even if a call seemed strange. To prevent fraud, people are advised to agree on a safe phrase with loved ones. Those are the latest headlines for now. I will be back with you at 10 o'clock for a full roundup.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Very good morning. Welcome to Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK. We're on GB News with me, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce.
Well, breaking news. Bernadette Spoforth, she was the 55-year-old woman who first shared the fake Southport suspect killer rumour online. He was arrested. Well, now she has been released.
And just to be clear, she wasn't the first person to... This is a breaking news story, so she wasn't the first person to share this information.
She was one of them.
She's one of 5,000 people that
right.
shared this information. This was when there was speculation initially that the Southport stabber at the Taylor Swift event had come across on a boat.
Yeah.
There was a suggestion that he was known to Secret Service, that he was on the mental health watch list in Liverpool. Bernie shared this information. It got picked up by some papers. She deleted it 2 hours later when she found out this was misinformation. And she was cooking the tea at home and she got a knock on the door and arrived 3 police officers, 3 cars and a meat van.
Slightly over the top.
To take her out and arrested her, put her in a cell for 36 hours. She's just released a video, just this minute, to bring people up to speed. A lot of people follow her online and she's very popular. This is what she said.
So on the 8th of August, the police turned up, mob-handed, 5 of them, 3 police cars and a prison van. And instead of a simple voluntary interview, they searched me, arrested me and held me for 36 hours in a concrete cell with a concrete bed, like a terrorist. They held me even though I told them that the evidence they needed had already been found by data experts. I explained my post was political, as almost all of my posts are, and my post was aimed at the government and its failing policies. I had not and would not make something up. But perhaps the authorities and the activists didn't actually care about the truth. They just wanted me punished as an example to you. Finally, I was released on bail. There really was nothing to take to magistrates and nothing to charge me with, but it didn't end there. Because my bail conditions included that I couldn't engage on social media, they didn't want me to speak to you about anything at all. Which meant I couldn't tell you of the damage done to me by those reporters and activists, and that it had been so complete I couldn't leave my house. That reporters were lying in wait for me in my garden, and that every day I had hate mail. I had nothing to gain from making something like that up, but others did gain. Journalists gained their clicks, my detractors gained my silence, and the authorities gained the silencing of you, because so many of you were afraid to speak. So to those who celebrated my arrest, don't enjoy it too much, because it could easily happen to you. And the difference between us is that I would fight for you. And for all those who stood up for me and did fight for me, thank you.
So she's had several weeks of hell, reputation in tatters. And she said, I didn't check the source. It actually came from what looked like a verified news source in America, something called Channel 3, which has since been taken off air. You can actually trace it back to India and to Pakistan, originally where this came from. It's an extraordinary case, but at the heart of it is this idea of free speech, actually, and whether you should be treated like that for posting something online that you get wrong.
And how many police officers went into her house?
I think she said 3 police officers, and there was 3 police cars and a meat wagon, I think, turned up. And she was held as long as she possibly could, had all her devices seized, and has had her devices seized for weeks while they went through everything. Because she's such a diligent researcher normally, I do know Bernadette Spofford. I don't mind admitting that I feel quite strongly about this also because she is a friend. Because she's so diligent normally in her research, she normally goes to the primary source. That was why it was so unusual for her to get it. She said, I did it, and then I went in the garden. I posted it, and then I went and did some gardening. I sort of forgot about it.
But then she took it down when she realised it was inaccurate.
2 hours later, she went, oh, this is misinformation.
Yeah.
And she took it down. We don't know how much of it is still misinformation. We still don't know if the killer was known to mental health services in Merseyside.
And anyway, we couldn't get into that anyway because there's charges, so we couldn't talk about it. I do think there's an irony about this as well, because on the front page of The Sun today, they've done some really good work. On the back of Hugh Edwards not going to prison, they revealed that only 1 in 5, it's always men, by the way, who watch those sort of images of children as young as 7 have been sent to prison.
1 in 5?
1 in 5, which means that filthy, disgusting trade continues to prosper and flourish.
Just extraordinary.
Because men are not being sent to prison. They've got to change the guidelines, they've got to change the sentencing rules, because I still think Hugh Edwards should be banged up.
Yeah.
Because he's a menace.
I would much rather people like Bernie, who post things on social media and live a completely crime-free life, are able to be out on the streets than absolute sickos. 4 out of 5 of the people
4 out of 5
who enjoy watching child
for sexual gratification. That's what they're doing it for.
Are still on the streets.
And remember, with Edwards, he paid the pervert paedophile who supplied the images, who also didn't go to prison, £15,000. But he says he wasn't paying for the films, he was giving him gifts as a thank you. Same thing, mate.
Yeah. Right, get in touch this morning, gbnews.com/your say. But let's move on to the Middle East. At least 9 people were killed and nearly 3,000 injured, including members of the Hezbollah terror group.
Let's talk to GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White. Mark, just remind us who Hezbollah are and why they were targeted, almost certainly by Israeli intelligence.
Yeah, Hezbollah are one of these groups, a proxy supported effectively by Iran. They are prescribed by a number of countries, including the UK, so they are a terrorist group, despite many other news organisations still persisting to call them a militant group. They are, according to our government, a terrorist group. Well, indeed, and others. So they have been involved ever since the 7th of October attacks, in which another terrorist group, Hamas, launched all these rockets and then went in and killed so many and took hundreds of hostages. They have been involved in firing thousands of rockets and drones across the southern border of Lebanon, where they are based, the most of them at least, into northern Israel. And for many months now, 80,000 people from northern Israel have been displaced, many of them in Tel Aviv. Actually, when I was out covering the aftermath of the attacks on October the 7th, dozens of those displaced Israeli citizens were in the same hotel as me. So Israel absolutely has an incentive, and they said yesterday that they were widening the scope, the goal of the war effort, to include ensuring that those displaced citizens could return to the north.
And those pages, which were targeted by by the Israeli intelligence services, were largely in the possession of Hezbollah operatives, terrorists.
Yes, absolutely so. I mean, I've heard a lot of people condemning the attacks, describing them as indiscriminate attacks. I would actually say they were
children have been injured.
I would actually argue that they were discriminate, very discriminate attacks, because the people that had these pagers were known terrorists and their associates. Of course, they have family lives, so you know it's potential for a pager to be at home, a child to go and look at. It's terrible, of course, any child being caught up in this. But this was a discriminate attack, you know, going after those who are Hezbollah fighters, terrorists, who are carrying these pagers on the instructions of their leader, by the way, Hassan Nasrallah, who said months ago, ditch your mobile phones, let's go old school. We don't want the Israeli intelligence services finding out what we're up to.
But of course that left... Because you can track a mobile phone where people are.
Yes, exactly. And that left the window open for Israeli intelligence to get into the supply chain of these mobiles to inject these military-grade high explosives into the pagers, and then they were shipped off 5,000 of them.
Have you ever seen anything
Never.
like this, Mark? It's like something out of a James Bond movie.
In all my years, many years in journalism, I've never heard that. I will say that I have heard of mobile phones being tampered with and exploding in terms of the same sort of thing, in high explosive being put inside them, and they've been used to assassinate a target terrorist. But only one or two instances of this happening over the years. The coordination to go after and to, take a massive batch like this of 5,000, to be able to know that obviously Hezbollah were asking for 5,000 pages in the first place to distribute, to get into that supply chain. We should say, by the way, it's a Taiwanese firm called Gold Apollo, denying any responsibility because they licensed the manufacture of these pagers out to a firm in Budapest in Hungary. We're also denying that they were in any way complicit with the Israelis in allowing their devices to be opened up and these explosives put in them.
But when did they get to tamper with them?
Well,
Who
exactly.
knows? That's what they will be very much looking into at the moment.
Could have been in the shipment process. I mean, we just don't know.
Amazing. Mark,
Okay.
thank you so much. We have got to move on. We've got the latest from the Lucy Letby inquiry in just a minute. Of course, she's the nurse who was convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempted to murder 7 others. Many people believe that she's innocent. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
What prompted you to go on your incredible journey?
Well, I was fighting my own demons at the time, before I started the walk, and it had been a long journey, if you like. And, I knew that I needed to make a change, and my daughter had just flown the nest. I was a single parent before this, and previous to that, I was ex-parachute regiment. And I knew that I needed to make a change, because if I didn't, I'm not sure where I would have been now, if that makes sense. So, something just came into my head at the very end of July and said, look, go and walk the UK coastline. And that's exactly what I did. And 6 years later, we've just finished.
You met your missus on the journey as well, didn't you? So truly, Chris, a transformative journey for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, you step into the unknown like that, you have no idea how things are going to work out. You go out with so little expectation, but only really with the aim to, for me personally, to come back feeling a lot better than what I was before I left. And that certainly succeeded. So everything that happened along that journey was one big learning curve. And I got to learn a lot about myself, a lot about, the public and people. And it was just a life-changing transformation for me. And, I learned so much, and I know what I want to do with the rest of my life as a result of it. And I met the most amazing people, and I worked hard. 6 years of carrying your house on your back isn't the easiest feat in the world. I can promise you that, but it was worth every single step, because I rescued a dog along the way. I met my now fiance Kate Barron along the way, and we had a baby together along the way as well. So to start in the position that I did, and then end up with all of that coming over the line with me, was just something that I never expected, and I couldn't have dreamed it up, to be honest.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
.9:50, this is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So, private evidence sessions examining the events of the former neonatal nurse Lucy Letby's murder and attempted murder of babies in the Thirlwall inquiry are set to continue in just a moment.
Now, this comes, remember, she's one of our most infamous serial children killers, as some senior MPs are saying they think she might be innocent.
Let's go live now to the town hall in Liverpool where the inquiry is taking place. GBNews' North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper is there for us now. Morning, Sophie. Just remind our viewers and our listeners why this inquiry is taking place.
Well, a very good morning to you both. We're into the second week of this Thirlwall inquiry, which the primary aim is to give some answers to the families of Letby's victims, but it's also going to try and determine exactly how she was able to carry out her crimes for essentially a year between June of 2015 and June of 2016. It's expecting to hear evidence from the likes of Letby's colleagues, from the Countess of Chester Hospital, from the wider NHS. But over the past few days, we've been hearing evidence from some of the parents of the babies involved in the Letby trial. Yesterday, for example, we heard from the mother of child D. She was murdered in June of 2015 by Letby, and the mother says that she believes if CCTV would have been implemented in the nursery where her daughter was attacked, that she may still be alive today. She said, "If I knew she had one collapse, I would have stayed there all night. If I had access because there was CCTV or because we were being kept aware of what was going on, she wouldn't have died. I would have been there, so it wouldn't have happened." Now, since the trial, every hospital in England with a neonatal ward have been asked if they would consider implementing CCTV in order to try and prevent this kind of thing from ever happening again. Now, this morning we are expecting to continue with evidence from parents. We're expecting to hear from the mother of child E and child F, twin boys who were both attacked by Letby. Child E was murdered via an injection of air, and child F, it was an attempted murder charge, poisoning with insulin. He did survive. Now, this morning we're unable to go into Liverpool Town Hall, into the inquiry itself, partially because of concerns around anonymity, but also, as I'm sure our viewers can understand, it must be incredibly difficult for those parents to stand up and to share the impacts that this has had on them and the lives of their wider family. So I think keeping the public and keeping the press out is all about allowing them the opportunity to stand up and share their side of the story. However, members of the press have been granted access via an audio link, so we will be able to listen across to it, and we will be able to bring you some of that evidence a little bit later on today.
OK, Sophie, thank you for that. That's Sophie Reaper at the ongoing inquiry. Coming up next, Prince Harry's coming back to the UK. I can't wait. But guess what? He's not bringing his wife. She has to stay and look after the kids.
That's OK. I'm all right. He doesn't have to bring his wife.
He is coming back for one of his children's charities, which is all well and good. And then there'll be the usual, will he or won't he have royal protection? He will.
And there's going to be so many people speculating that, including you, Andrew Pierce, that he hasn't brought his wife because their marriage is in trouble.
I don't know if his marriage is in trouble. I suspect it isn't. We wouldn't know, would we?
No, we wouldn't know.
We wouldn't know.
I don't think it. I think it probably isn't. They're sort of joined by their having a joint adversary of the rest of the world. Those two. Exactly.
I mean, and then of course it will lead to all the speculation. Will he see Prince William? I'll lay money on it. He won't.
No, quite. Good morning, June. June has got in touch saying, "Good morning, Bev and Andrew. Enjoying watching you both." Well, we're enjoying having you. Get in touch this morning, gbnews.com/your say. Here's Annie with the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's going to be another fine and dry day for many of us once any fog and low cloud clears this morning, and it will once again feel pretty warm in the sunshine. There is a bit of a pesky easterly breeze though once again across the far southeast, and that will linger through much of the day. The breeze will also pick up across the northwest later on, but for many of us another dry and fine day, and as I said, it will feel fairly warm in the sunshine, temperatures climbing towards the mid-20s in fact across the far south and east, and even across northwestern areas of Scotland will be in the low 20s, which is well above average for the time of year for these areas. Should stay fairly mild overnight as well. Some rural spots, particularly across some sheltered glens of Scotland, will chill off as the sun goes down this evening, but it should be a fine end to the day. We had the full moon last night, but it will still look pretty spectacular tonight, I think. Plenty of clear skies for stargazing this evening as well. Northern Ireland as well, seeing plenty of clear skies through this evening, but it's across the east coast. We'll start to see that cloud being dragged in overnight, so that will likely linger across eastern coast through Wednesday evening and into Thursday morning as well. It's probably going to be a bit more extensive through Thursday morning compared to this morning, so a cloudier start for many more of us to come on Thursday. But across western areas, clear skies will continue to dominate, particularly parts of western Wales, southwest England and parts of western Scotland as well. That's where temperatures will fall away a little lower, but with the breeze and the cloud further east, temperatures holding up into double digits for many areas. So probably a bit of a cloudier start to Thursday. The cloud will start to burn back though, particularly across the east coast, where we continue to see this easterly breeze bringing a slightly fresher feel to these areas compared to more western parts of the UK. But across the west, another fine and bright and sunny day with temperatures well above average into the mid-20s for some of us. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Box Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Hello, good morning. I'm Andy Hilbert with the latest on the roads across the UK for a Wednesday morning. In Leicestershire, the northbound M1 moving better now following the earlier accident, junction 20 at Lutterworth to junction 21 for the M69. In Kent, the London-bound M2, a lane closed on the exit slip road due to a broken down vehicle at junction 4 for Gillingham. And in Buckinghamshire, the clockwise M25, long delays in a lane closed due to an accident at junction 16 for the M40. Currently on the anti-clockwise M25 in Surrey, all traffic temporarily being held due to a van fire just before junction 6 at Godstone. And in Hampshire, the westbound M27, queuing with the lane closed due to an accident. That's at junction 12 for the M275 for Portsmouth. And in Monmouthshire, the Severn Bridge, the M48 there eastbound, queuing with the lane closed due to an accident at junction 2 at Cheapstow to junction 1 at Ost. That's going to affect you over the Severn Bridge there this morning from what we can see. That's the latest. You're up to date.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Wednesday the 18th of September, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So they're called the deadly exploding pages. At least 9 people confirmed dead and thousands injured in the suspected, I think we can say it was, Israeli intelligence attack on Hezbollah. Mark White has the latest.
Well, the Hezbollah terror group has vowed revenge on Israel, who have a policy of neither confirming nor denying these secret operations. However, a US official has confirmed that Israel briefed them on this audacious plan.
And breaking news this morning, Bernie Spofford, who is arrested for sharing the incorrect name of the Southport stabbing suspect online, has spoken out just now.
So to those who celebrated my arrest, don't enjoy it too much, because it could easily happen to you. And the difference between us is that I would fight for you.
Fascinating. Now, in an attempt to tackle the recruitment crisis in schools, teachers are going to be allowed to work from home for marking, reading and planning lessons. Will that make more of them stay in their jobs?
And Princess Catherine has returned to work. There were heard that the Princess of Wales, we're hearing, did some royal duties, the first that she's done since undergoing chemotherapy. It's good to have you back.
And talking matters royal, Prince Harry's coming back to Britain this month. You'll be devastated. He's not bringing Meghan. You know Bernie, don't you?
I do know her. A lot of people do know her. She had to change her Twitter account because of some of the stuff that she posted, particularly during lockdowns when she was questioning government policy. That's all she's ever really done. She doesn't consider herself to be aligned with any particular political party, and she was commenting on government policy when that tweet saw her arrested. So she's made a statement this morning. gbnews.com/your say to let us know your thoughts, your reaction to that story, and everything else we're talking about this morning. First, the very latest news with Sam.
Bev, Andrew, thank you very much, and good morning to you. Just after 10 o'clock, the top story of the day today, the Foreign Office is urging calm heads and de-escalation after hundreds of simultaneous explosions across Lebanon and parts of Syria. 9 people were killed and thousands injured in what's believed to have been a remote attack targeting communication devices. Hezbollah militants and the Iranian ambassador were among those wounded as tensions between Israel and the militant group continue to rise. The Foreign Office is urging British citizens now to leave Lebanon, warning they could be trapped in a war zone. Development Minister Annalise Dodds says the UK will be supporting civilians impacted in the explosions.
Like many others, I woke up this morning to the news and reports of developments in Lebanon, and this clearly is an awful situation. I'm very concerned to hear about the reports of civilian casualties. Clearly, I don't know all of the details of this. As I say, we woke up to this news, but the UK will be working with, particularly with our humanitarian partners in the region.
Here, inflation remained above the 2% target, unchanged at 2.2% last month, with new data out this morning. Prices in hospitality, holidays and in hotels, possibly boosted by the final leg of Taylor Swift's UK tour, are driving inflation, with the services sector up to 5.6% in August. Treasury Chief Darren Jones says years of sky-high inflation are continuing to put strain on British families despite the slower rise. He added the government is determined to fix the foundations of the economy to ease pressures on households. Experts, though, believe the figures could point to the Bank of England keeping interest rates at 5% tomorrow. Former Scottish First Minister Alex Salmond says every nation deserves a second chance on the 10th anniversary of Scotland's failed independence bid. He's predicting the country will be independent within the next decade. Reflecting on the 2014 campaign, he's admitted mistakes in its final weeks, but doubts that a different strategy would have changed the outcome. Since the vote, support for the independence campaign has remained largely static, frustrating many, including Salmond, who blames the current Scottish government for a lack of action. He insists the push for independence must now accelerate, as Scotland, he says, doesn't have time on its hands. Ban the IRGC, that's the call from Robert Jenrick, as he argues the Iranian Revolutionary Guard should be labelled a terrorist group. The Conservative leadership candidate wrote in the Daily Telegraph, saying Labour had once promised to take action but is failing to deliver. Jenrick argues the IRGC is the world's chief sponsor of terror, and cracking down on it would, he says, help tackle affiliated groups. Foreign Secretary David Lammy has introduced sanctions against groups linked to the IRGC, but hasn't moved to prescribe it a terrorist organisation. The public inquiry into the crimes of convicted child serial killer nurse Lucy Letby continues today, with parents of her victims giving evidence. The investigation is scrutinising how Letby, now serving 15 life sentences, was able to murder 7 babies and injure 7 more while she worked as a nurse at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Yesterday, the mother of child D told the inquiry that having CCTV in her daughter's hospital room could have prevented her murder. The inquiry is now looking into whether all neonatal units across England should install CCTV. The hearings are set to continue until early 2025, with findings expected by late autumn. Our North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper is in Liverpool for us today, where the inquiry is taking place.
This morning we are expecting to continue with evidence from parents. We're expecting to hear from the mother of child E and child F, twin boys who were both attacked by Letby. Child E was murdered via an injection of air, and child F, it was an attempted murder charge, poisoning with insulin. He did survive. Now, this morning we're unable to go into Liverpool Town Hall, into the inquiry itself, partially because of concerns around anonymity, but also, as I'm sure our viewers can understand, it must be incredibly difficult for those parents to stand up and to share the impacts that this has had on them and the lives of their wider families.
Sophie Reaper there for us in Liverpool. Well, posting voice recordings online could lead to scam attempts, according to a leading bank. Starling Bank says AI voice cloning technology is being used to imitate people's voices, allowing scammers to target family members for money. Almost half of those surveyed had no idea that such scams even existed, while 1 in 12 said they would send money even if a call seemed strange. To prevent fraud, people are advised to agree on a safe phrase with loved ones. And finally, royal news for you. The Princess of Wales is back at work after completing her cancer treatment. She held a meeting at Windsor Castle discussing early childhood development, a cause, of course, close to her heart. It's the first time Princess Kate's been listed in the official record of royal events since finishing chemotherapy, which she announced in a video with her family. Meanwhile, Prince William made a private visit to SAS Regiment in Hertfordshire, and Prince Harry is also set to return to the UK later this month to attend the 2024 Well-Child Awards. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'll be back with you in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good morning. Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Bev and Andrew. You've all been getting in touch at home. A lot of you in support of Bernie Spofforth, the social media commentator who was arrested for accidentally posting some misinformation. She was charged. She
wasn't accidentally. She posted it, but she hadn't realised it was misinformation. And then when she did, 2 hours later, she said she went in the garden.
That's right.
Probably put the washing out. She took it down.
And what they'd arrested her for was deliberately posting disinformation liable to incite violence that would cause more than trivial harm.
Yeah.
So deliberately posting disinformation. So the idea that you sit there and you think, I'm just going to make something up that's going to cause a riot. And that's not what she did. And also incitement to racial hatred because she questioned the government policy over illegal migration and boat crossings when the speculation was that the stabber had come across on a dinghy. Anyway, no further action as of this morning. June has said, I'm so glad that lady's been able to have her story heard. Now, let the lady out who posted a media, yes, silly, but first conviction, and deleted it straight away. She got 15 months in jail and is a carer for her husband, whereas Hugh Edwards walks free. How is that justice?
Yeah, and just to remind people, The Sun have done some very good work today on back of Hugh Edwards, and they've looked at cases in the last 9 months, 20% only of sick men looking at these terrible videos of young boys and girls went to jail. Only 20%.
Do you think we need to be handling paedophilia not differently, because we need to be, obviously it's the worst possible crime unimaginable. We spoke to a psychotherapist yesterday, said it is the most successful way to mess up somebody is to sexually abuse them as a child. But if there are so many, if this is so prolific now and so common, why? What's going on?
In a 9-month period, there were over 1 million indecent images of children viewed by 27 paedos. None of them went to jail.
0 jail time for looking at over 1 million images.
And yet, on the day Hugh Edwards was given a suspended jail sentence, a homeless man went to prison for stealing some cake. Now, he probably had a long record of shoplifting, but it does put it in perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah, doesn't it? Right, keep your messages coming. GBNews.com/you'll Ross has said, I like Bev's Miami Vice look this morning. He said, I need to roll my sleeves up. Ross, I'm doing it. He says I look super cool.
Does she look like Don or the other one?
I look like that MP. What was that MP used to wear? A white suit?
Martin Bell.
Thank you.
He still wears the same white suit.
So,
it's
not this one.
It's a bit grubby now.
Right, good news. The Princess of Wales is back at work. Her Royal Highness held an early years meeting at Windsor Castle yesterday.
This is the first meeting that's been noted in the court circular, which is the official record of royal engagement since the Princess began her cancer treatment earlier this year. So we're going to talk now to royal broadcaster Caroline Aston. Caroline, that is good news because it's another sign that she's recovering, although we do know it's quite clear that she's not out of the woods yet with cancer.
Absolutely, and I'm sure her engagements, the ones that are published, will be carefully monitored to make sure that her energy levels, her general well-being are considered first and foremost. But great to see her, you know, also talking about one of the causes so dear to her heart, those early years. I mean, after all, she has got 3 of the most photogenic children you could imagine who starred in the, perhaps at times, somewhat controversial video. Lots of debate going on about that, about the production values, the glossiness of it, etc. But generally, I think the opinion has been it's great to see her. Wonderful good news that she's well on the road back to recovery, we hope. And to see a family together enjoying the dappled sunlight, the ferns, and of course that wonderful music. Great piece of filmmaking, in my opinion, by Will Waugh. Great job done there. And yes, there she is, such a popular member of the royal family. And I'm sure we've all watched her progress back to this point of re-emergence with hope in our hearts. And I thought her message to fellow sufferers that they're not alone, hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, and out of darkness, of course, can come bright light. Yeah. Great words from a great lady.
And Caroline, talking of re-emergence, we've got the visit of Prince Harry to look forward to this month. Why is he going to be here and how do you think he'll be greeted?
Well, of course, the small handful of charities that he's still attached to following stepping down as a non-working royal, the Well Child Award is a very important one, dealing as it does with disabled and seriously ill children. He was here last year to present awards. That was on September the 7th last year. A charity that was founded, I think it was around about 2005, and he takes it seriously. But of course, rather like Meghan was supposedly and then not cropped from the birthday greeting photograph that was published the other day, she's not in the picture for this visit. And in fact, are we surprised by that? Probably not. I'm sure every body language expert in the land will be watching the prince's demeanour, his expression, every gesture and twitch to see what they can read into it. But we've moved on, haven't we, from the days of being joined at the hip, these two, and we move into a future where there's a divergence of pathways. Watch that space.
OK, thank you, Caroline. Brilliant as always. Caroline Aston there, royal broadcaster.
Now, there's a problem in our schools. We can't keep teachers, so government plan is to allow them to work from home. Head teachers be told they can let their staff do marking, planning away from the classroom. Good idea?
I think it's a great idea. Well, joining us now in the studio is political commentator Theo Usherwood. So, Theo, the government are very keen, aren't they, to keep this work from home culture going, but it is a very divisive issue.
It is. So what the government's proposing here for teachers through Bridget Phillips and the Education Secretary is to allow teachers to, in effect, create chunks, free periods, which they already have for marking and planning, and to create blocks, either at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. And so rather than doing those blocks at school and then going back into the classroom or after they've left the classroom, it's just to say actually you can do those blocks from home. And I think they're trying to make the teaching profession, the government's trying to make the teaching profession that little bit more attractive because it is hemorrhaging staff at the moment. We've got 32,000 women have leave the profession last year after having children. 800 are leaving the teaching profession every week. Last November, there were some stats out recently from last November. 1 in 4 are quitting within 3 years of starting. But the question is actually, is this just too little? Do the government need to go much further? Because actually teachers in that pay review that we've seen with public sector workers, they only got around 5.5% in terms of a pay rise.
Yeah, junior doctors get 22%.
Train drivers get 14.5%. And actually, is there something to say, well, hang on a moment, if you want staff retention for teachers, and the average salary of a teacher is only £37,000, an experienced train driver can earn upwards of £55,000, is there actually to say you need to just pay teachers more money? Now, at the moment, the only plan the government has in order to draw more money, put more money into education, is this removing the VAT exemption for private schools, which they hope will raise around 1.6 billion, which will then be put into more state school education. But of course, that will mean that there will be those inevitably who have to drop out of private school education because their parents can't afford it.
Part of the problem, reason teachers are leaving school, is because they just can't stand the abuse they get from the kids
Yeah.
and the parents of the kids. Isn't that a big part of the problem?
It's a huge part of the problem is that teachers they're dealing with large classes and this is a complaint that you often get from unions and it was a part of this report that was out at the beginning of this month is that actually it's stress.
Yeah.
It's not just the long hours, it's the the way that parents interact with teachers, head teachers, and also having to deal with unruly children in the classroom. And the previous government had a sort of push towards allowing schools to exclude pupils. Be interesting to see, what this new Labour government decides to do with that.
I think actually, on paper, when I first saw this headline, I thought it was a terrible idea because you can't have a teacher at home when you've got 30 kids in a classroom. But actually, if it is just about them being able to manage their time a little bit better and have some time, particularly, I think, for working parents, I'm reluctant to say mums, but of course the burden will fall predominantly on mums. Then I think it's okay. If you say, well, you've not got a class until 11 o'clock on a Wednesday morning, then stay at home, do your lesson planning, do your marking, miss the rush hour traffic to get in. I think I'm okay with that, Theo. I think it's very modern. We have to move.
And it's cost neutral from the Exchequer's point of view. It's just about telling head teachers just to be, better organised in terms of planning their week and planning, how they organise their staff over a period of time. It doesn't actually put any onus on Rachel Reeves in the Treasury to come up with more money for teachers, and you just improve a lot of the teachers that little bit more.
It could also mean the teacher might be able to do the school run of their own kids.
Yes. Exactly. It makes life a bit easier. I can't have you here, Theo Wishwood, without talking about politics.
Go on.
It's PMQs today.
Yes.
And sometimes I forget that we could have still been waiting.
Because it's the Lib Dem conference.
Oh, of course, it's the conference.
Yeah.
Well, that's not really made the headlines.
We've had the Lib Dem conference, and of course we've got the Reform Party conference on Friday, Saturday. I think that's going to be one.
But imagine if there was PMQs today, the Prime Minister would be under such pressure on Freebiegate.
Yes, I mean,
pages of it in the papers again today.
£740 tickets to Wimbledon.
Yeah, and he has to sit in the hospitality boxes because of security. When Rishi Sunak, as Prime Minister, used to sit in the stand at Southampton with his mate. Why one rule for him?
So I think part of the problem that Keir Starmer has got, there are two problems actually. I think the first part of the problem is that you go back to the steps of Downing Street when he gave that speech as he became Prime Minister, and he said it was about public service. Yeah, and it's difficult to see when you look at the gifts that he's received how that chimes with being in public service. The other part of the problem is that most of your viewers here at GB News don't have somebody who can cough up a huge amount of money to fund parts of their lifestyle, whether it be their wardrobe or, their social life.
Staying in their house during the election campaign.
Yes, and I think, at a time when everybody is going to be asked to tighten their belts, to make tough decisions, as the government is making tough decisions to get the economy on the right foot, for Keir Starmer to then have these stories about the gifts that he's received, which are actually more than the donations, I think is just not a good look. And there seems to be a lack of contrition, because when he was asked about it in Italy, he didn't say, actually, you know what, hands up, I've got this one wrong. He said, I'm going to follow the rules, which is that the implication of that is, if you take that forward, is that actually, if he can continue to receive gifts, he can continue to receive the freebies within the letter of the law, then of course that he plans to do so, rather than actually the spirit. What is 2024? It's going to be a tough couple of months. It's going to be a tough winter, especially for those parents who've lost the winter fuel, pensioners who've lost the winter fuel allowance.
We've got to move on. Theo, great to see you. Thank you for that. Up next, we're going to be looking at this perversion of justice, correct word, when it comes to the amount of paedophiles avoiding jail. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
EasyJet is launching a new recruitment drive focused on attracting cabin crew members over 50 and those even considering retirement.
Well, the initiative is called Returnships and is inspired by research that suggests that 75% of people over 50 years old believe that now is the ideal time to embark on a new career.
Joining us now to discuss what it takes to embark on a second career as cabin crew is Helen Williams. Good morning, Helen.
Hi, good morning, Helen.
Welcome. Just touching down in our studio.
It is. I've had a few days off and now I'm here.
So you are now cabin crew.
I am.
What inspired you to get into it? What did you do before? How did it all come around?
Oh, so when I graduated, I took an office job with my grad scheme, and that job lasted 6 months, and I started working for a European carrier. I did just over 5 years at that European carrier and had an absolutely fabulous time. I then went on to a wet lease operation with an Irish carrier and another mainline UK carrier. I then decided to have time out. I had a business, I had a family, I had children, and last autumn I decided, why not? Let's go back and do it all again. So returning to that European carrier that I'd worked at when I was in my early 20s.
And what is that like for you now, returning that bit older, having that life experience, having your children? Do you think that's been a benefit to you?
It's absolutely been a benefit. I mean, the amount of parents that thank me for helping me with their small children when they're crying on a flight. I am that person now.
When you went back for a second time, did you notice more sort of older people amongst your sort of colleagues?
I did. So when I returned onto my initial course in March of this year, just over half the course were over the age of 30.
Wow.
Which was absolutely phenomenal. And I was expecting to return and be with a lot of younger, 18, 19, 24. I was expecting to be that dinosaur. And that first day of training, to find out that I wasn't the dinosaur, you have no idea how exciting that was. And they've gone on, that particular group, to be phenomenal crew members.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
So we've got some breaking news. The Post Office Chief Executive, Nick Reed, he had been the subject of bullying allegations. He was exonerated of those, by the way. He's to step down from his role in March next year. He temporarily stepped down in July as he was prepared to give evidence to the Horizon IT Post Office inquiry, which is dragging on and on. But we'll give you more on this throughout the day.
Right, we've got the two Mr P's, Mike Parry and former Labour MP Stephen Pound, in the studio with us. Good morning, gentlemen. Right, shall we start with exploding pages? This is the most extraordinary story, Mike. I mean, it's like something out of a movie, isn't it?
I'm just trying to pick up on it as all the facts come out. The latest figure I've got is there were 5,000 pages. There are 5,000 pages somewhere, you know, in the Lebanon, northern Israel, maybe even Syria, which could still yet go off. I mean, apparently. But, I mean, the most sophisticated military attack I think I've ever heard of. How did they possibly do it? I mean, did they intercept these pages and put explosives in them?
But where did they do that, and how did they do that, and who didn't notice?
Well, in between Taipei and Beirut, obviously, because they made it.
Or was there collusion with the people who they bought them from?
Well, here's an interesting thing. There's an awful lot of people, Hezbollah sleeper agents, in what used to be the old South Lebanese army in the Bekaa Valley, and so suddenly you've got somebody who you don't think is Hezbollah. Suddenly their phone blows up, and that's the indicator. Because what's targeted about this was that Hezbollah only gave these to their own agents. So talk about identification.
Yeah.
I mean, the interesting thing is whether it's C4 or whether it's HMX or whether it's some sort of form of Semtex, it's a tiny, tiny amount and it's caused catastrophic damage. But I have to say, it will also increase the paranoia because don't forget, Hezbollah are only using pagers because they don't trust mobile phones.
Sure.
Yeah. So where will they go now? Apparently, they're actually going to have sort of like a message on a stick where they're actually all doing it by hand.
Yeah, or wave it around. But I also, overnight, picked up stuff to say that this could be an inside job because Hezbollah is splintered into half a dozen factions, you know, within the terrorist organisation it is, and that somebody wants rid of the people at the top, and this is the way to do it, to try and destroy the whole thing and start again. But won't it give succour and comfort to people like Putin and the Chinese and North Korea who think, wow, how, if Israel can do it, we can do it?
Well, that was my thought. If they can do it, it would be a matter of time before the Chinese can do it or Putin.
You can see Putin this morning saying to his security bill, right, we must do this in the phones that are supplied to the CIA in America, OK? Because if they can do it, we can do it.
Because, look, we know that the Russians were listening into the phone of Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, who should have been one of the most secure people on the planet.
Absolutely.
So
don't forget, the CIA tried. Do you remember Fidel Castro's exploding cigar and all that?
Yes, that's
the CIA. But what I find kind of extraordinary about is how the world has changed. Back in my day, military forces, you wore uniform, they wore uniform. Ship to ship, battalion to battalion. Nowadays, it's civilianised, it's asymmetric, you don't know who the enemy are. It's it's a completely new... And it's a rather dystopian new world here, because it isn't, you know, just two people facing each other. It's you don't know who your enemy... You don't know if your phone's going to blow up.
But just briefly, Mike, it's a deliberate escalation by Israel.
I admire Israel so much because the whole of the world is telling them all the time, show restraint and let's not have escalation. And Israel's saying, no, they attack us, we're attacking them. For instance, the only sort of quote I've seen from many was in his followers says, what an unprovoked, aggressive attack of a breach of international law. Hezbollah pour missiles into Israel
every day,
24 hours a day, every day.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what Israel live under. And then when Israel come back and say, well, I'm sorry, we are both responding, we are attacking our enemy, we are defending our country, the whole world calls them aggressive.
I know. It's an act of war, but they're in a war.
Yeah, of course.
Still is amazing, though, isn't it, that Mossad was able to let those attacks happen at all on the 7th of October when they are capable of this sort
That is extraordinary. How the biggest security failure in the entire history of the state of Israel.
It will still be the undoing of Netanyahu.
Oh, it will be, no doubt. But on the terms of this sort of targeted assassination, I mean, they actually killed a senior Iranian officer with a radio-controlled machine gun mounted on a taxi in Tehran. I mean, it's extraordinary stuff, and it really is a totally different world now.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Talking of a different world, this is a world I don't want to live in. This is the judges who are letting paedophiles,
disgusting,
Stephen, go free when they've been looking at... There's over a million.
Over a million.
The Sun have done a fantastic
and they really have done a good job.
Today.
Yeah. I find this absolutely extraordinary. I mean, obviously, the Hugh Edwards story, the horror of Hugh Edwards, has kind of brought this home. And I think what the judges are saying is because the person who provided this sick scumbag down in South Wales who provided these filthy children being tortured for somebody else's gratification, this foul scum swine, he didn't go to prison.
He got 12 months suspended.
But he should have gone to prison.
Of course he should.
I would have suspended him on a rope.
I agree.
Yeah, he should have gone to prison, which is why Edwards was not going to go to prison.
Exactly, but the whole of the legal world need to look inside themselves because yesterday I saw a guy called Sir Ken MacDonald, former DPP in a Tory government. His actual quote was, in legal terms, this is about what should be expected for somebody who's committed these sorts of crimes. And he's looking back on precedent. And that's the problem. This has been going on for so long. A million people in this country could be up to this sort of thing. But the sentences which have been passed down over decades have been incredibly lenient.
It just shows, doesn't it, that I think the sentencing hasn't kept up with the technology.
It hasn't.
But also, what's happened to these children?
They can't identify them.
They can't identify them. What state are they in? Are they still being abused?
Well, not only that, but they're only the ones we know about.
Exactly.
Right? How many, literally hundreds of thousands of children have been subjected to the same horror?
I mean, the Sun looked at 27 cases where nobody went to prison, involving 1 million images.
Unbelievable.
1,034,000 in prison, and nobody went to prison.
Yeah.
And some of these children were 6 and 7 years old.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Andrew, can you imagine a worse job in the world than the police officer who has to actually...
You read my mind. I just thought the same
some of
thing.
these categories, I mean, I cannot even mention on it. I wish I could get it out of my head. But I know a little bit about some of these Category A pictures because I was slightly involved with the constituent who did this. And to actually have to look at them, it took me months to stop getting that image out of my head.
Yeah.
It's still there.
I totally agree.
And yet there's police officers who spend months looking at these things. I mean, they are the greatest heroes.
I know.
Aren't they?
Well, somebody's got something out. Don't you think Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary now, she's got an open goal. All she needs to do now is announce a total rethink of the scales of justice when it comes to offences like the Hugh Edwards one, because the punishment is too weak, and I'm going to toughen it up, and I'm going to save children. Wouldn't you think she would do that?
Yeah, and put these disgusting men, they're all men, almost always, in prison, behind bars.
If you make the deterrent 10 years for the Hugh Edwards crime, then you're going to save children from these horrors.
And it's interesting, in every British prison, there's a thing called the VPU, which is called the Vulnerable Prisoner Unit, because prisoners, you know the word nonce means not ordinary, normal criminal ethos. I mean, the sort of the good old-fashioned criminals, they have a hatred and condemnation of these people. And in some way, I'm not going to feel sorry for some paedophile.
No, if a paedophile's attacked in prison, too bad. They've been attacking these children.
But I'm sure the Liberal left use that as part of their excuse not to jail people. He'd have too rough a time in jail.
I know.
They use that all the time.
That was used here.
No, I'm not. They use that all the time.
In the Edwards case, that was part of the reasoning.
He's a vulnerable man, problem with his mental health, and his celebrity would make him vulnerable in prison.
Yeah, right. And on that bombshell, look at Stephen. We've silenced him. That doesn't happen very often. We're going to go to the news headlines with Sam Francis.
I'm gobsmacked.
Very good morning to you, 10:32 exactly, and we'll start with a recap of that breaking news brought to us just in the last few minutes that Nick Reed, CEO of the Post Office, is stepping down after leading the company through one of its most turbulent periods in recent times. Reed temporarily stepped back in July to prepare for the next stage of the Horizon scandal inquiry. Neil Brocklehurst, the current interim chief operating officer, is expected to take over. Reed called his time with the Post Office a great privilege and acknowledged the challenges faced by the business and sub-postmasters. He also added that while there is still work to do, progress has been made in resetting the relationship with postmasters and supporting justice. More on that story throughout the rest of this morning. In other news, the Foreign Office is urging calm heads and de-escalation after hundreds of simultaneous explosions across Lebanon and parts of Syria. 9 people were killed and thousands injured in what's believed to have been a remote attack targeting communication devices. That attack, which wounded Hezbollah fighters and the Iranian ambassador, is believed to have been the work of Israel's Mossad, according to a senior Lebanese security source. Speaking to the Reuters news agency, the spy agency planted explosives in 5,000 pages imported by Hezbollah months before the attack. Here, the Foreign Office is urging British citizens to leave Lebanon, warning they could be trapped in a war zone. Inflation remained above the 2% target, unchanged at 2.2% last month, with new data out today. Prices in hospitality, holidays and hotels possibly boosted by the final leg of Taylor Swift's tour, are driving inflation, with inflation in the services sector up to 5.6% in August. Treasury Chief Darren Jones says years of sky-high inflation continue to put strain on British families, despite the slower rise, and added that the government is determined to fix the foundations of the economy. The public inquiry into the crimes of convicted child serial killer nurse Lucy Letby continues today, with the parents of her victims giving evidence. The investigation is scrutinising how Letby, now serving 15 life sentences, was able to murder 7 babies and injure 7 more while she worked as a nurse at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Yesterday, the mother of child D told the inquiry having CCTV in her daughter's hospital room could have prevented her murder. The inquiry is now looking into whether all neonatal units in England should install CCTV. Well, our North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper is in Liverpool for us, where that inquiry is taking place.
This morning we are expecting to continue with evidence from parents. We're expecting to hear from the mother of child E and child F, twin boys who were both attacked by Letby. Child E was murdered via an injection of air, and child F, it was an attempted murder charge, poisoning with insulin. He did survive. Now, this morning we're unable to go into Liverpool Town Hall, into the inquiry itself, partially because of concerns around anonymity, but also, as I'm sure our viewers can understand, it must be incredibly difficult for those parents to stand up and to share the impacts that this has had on them and the lives of their wider families.
Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I think I've got a fly climbing up my face, so I'm going to hand you straight back to Bev and Andrew.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Still to come this morning, the Prime Minister is being urged to create a Minister for Men.
Oh.
Do you feel you need a minister?
No.
We're going to talk to the man who's demanding one to be appointed in just a minute. I think it's a good idea. I think you need as much help as you can get.
Stephen Pound maybe is going to apply for the job.
We might discuss this with
Minister for old geezers.
Oh, I didn't even get to talk about the lovely honey that Stephen Pound brought me as well, that he made with his own fair hands. We'll talk about that as well.
Yeah.
Don't go anywhere. This is GB News.
I think it was the bee.
Good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's going to be another fine and dry day for many of us once any fog and low cloud clears this morning, and it will once again feel pretty warm in the sunshine. There is a bit of a pesky easterly breeze though once again across the far southeast, and that will linger through much of the day. The breeze will also pick up across the northwest later on, but for many of us another dry and fine day, and as I said, it will feel fairly warm in the sunshine. Temperatures climbing towards the mid-20s in fact across the far south and east, and even across northwestern areas of Scotland will be in the low 20s, which is well above average for the time of year for these areas. Should stay fairly mild overnight as well. Some rural spots, particularly across some sheltered glens of Scotland, will chill off as the sun goes down this evening, but it should be a fine end to the day. We had the full moon last night, but it will still look pretty spectacular tonight, I think. Plenty of clear skies for stargazing this evening as well. Northern Ireland as well, seeing plenty of clear skies through this evening, but it's across the east coast where we'll start to see that cloud being dragged in overnight. So that will likely linger across eastern coast through Wednesday evening and into Thursday morning as well. It's probably going to be a bit more extensive through Thursday morning compared to this morning. So a cloudier start for many of us to come, many more of us to come on Thursday. But across western areas, clear skies will continue to dominate, particularly parts of Western Wales, southwest England and parts of Western Scotland as well. That's where temperatures will fall away a little lower. But with the breeze and the cloud further east, temperatures holding up into double digits for many areas. So probably a bit of a cloudier start to Thursday. The cloud will start to burn back though, particularly across the east coast where we continue to see this easterly breeze bringing a slightly fresher feel to these areas compared to more western parts of the UK. But across the west, another fine and bright and sunny day with temperatures well above average into the mid-20s for some of us. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Hello, good morning. I'm Andy Hilbert with the latest on the roads across the UK for a Wednesday morning. In Kent, the London-bound M2 now moving a lot better following the earlier broken-down vehicle that was affecting you around Junction 4 at Gillingham. In Surrey, the anti-clockwise M25 queuing with the lane closed due to a van fire at the minute just before Junction 6 at Godstone. The queues are back to Junction 7 for the M23. In Surrey, the anti-clockwise M25, one lane closed there at the moment due to a broken down lorry at Junction 10 for the A3 at the Wisley interchange. And also as well in Hampshire, the westbound M27, one lane closed due to a broken down vehicle from Junction 7 at Hedge to Junction 5, Southampton Airport and Eastleigh. Also in Hampshire, the eastbound M27 queuing with a lane closed due to an accident, Junction 8 at Hamble to Junction 9 at Fareham. And in Greater Manchester, the anti-clockwise M60, one lane is closed due to an accident, Junction 23 for Ashton-under-Lyne to Junction 22 at Failsworth. Across the UK, you're up to date.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
10:39. This is Britain's Newsroom. Were you off somewhere then?
Hello. Very good, thank you.
I think he was looking for the biscuits.
Well, we keep saying that we're running out, hoping that we might get some more sent in the post. No.
20 minutes till biscuit time. Right.
The former MP Harvey Proctor, he's written an interesting letter to Labour, to the Prime Minister, urging him to appoint a Minister for Men after Britain was labelled the sick man of Europe, with more people than ever being signed off work as long-term sick.
So former Conservative MP Harvey Proctor joins us live. Good morning, Harvey. OK, so why do we need a Minister for Men?
Good morning to you both. We have had a Minister for Women and a Minister for Children-specific issues for quite some years. I think there are issues that disproportionately affect men, and I think it's time, and will be good, for men to have a voice, specific voice in Cabinet and in government. And therefore I've written a very polite letter, not demanding, but suggesting that the new Prime Minister should look at appointing a Minister for Men. There are certain issues, National Health Service issues, prostrate, falsely accused. Men are more likely to be falsely accused than others. Educational issues, males are having difficulties, I think, in schooling disproportionately to girls, and perhaps holding back from going to university. Quite a number of issues that disproportionately affect men, and by the way, disproportionately affect the economy. I mentioned prostrate cancers. If the National Health Service treated, prevented rather than treated illnesses, it could save something like £18 billion. And I think last year there were 900,000 missing workers. Most of them were men. If that problem could be addressed and sorted, the revenue would have £4.5 billion more in the kitty. So it's a question of finance, but it's also a question of social cohesion that I think it's probably time to look at appointing a Minister for Men.
Aren't men just automatically assumed to sort of be the default issue in so much of life, Harvey? Men still outperform women in the workplace, and not in academics, actually, young men. Women still do better there. So you just think this is just an issue of equality, that we are neglecting men, particularly, I mean, suicide remains still the biggest killer of men under 45?
Not necessarily equality, just more positive things could be done where men are failing. And if it is thought reasonable that we should have a Minister for Women, a Minister for Children, a Minister for Equalities, then I think we should certainly consider appointing a Minister for Men, for male voices to be heard perhaps a bit better than they have been in recent years.
Have you got a candidate for the job, Harvey?
I don't think I will be applying for any further jobs. I work hard enough as it is, back working on the Beaver estate, which I think you know.
I do.
And my spare time is strictly limited. I'm always available to help our country, as you know.
Oh, well, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much, former Conservative MP Harvey Proctor. Did you say you're familiar with the Beaver estate?
It's up in Rutland. I used to know the Rutland MP very well.
Is that where he lives, the Beaver estate?
He lives on a cottage on the Duke of Rutland's estate.
Oh.
Yeah. And when he was treated appallingly by the police, he was wrongfully accused of being part of that VIP Westminster section. Yeah, it was terrible. The Duke of Rutland booted him out of his Grace and Favour cottage on the estate. I'm talking about innocent until proven guilty.
Ooh.
But he's back there now and does a very good job.
You know all the gossip, Andrew Pierce, don't you? You know everything about these blokes. I wanted to just bring a little bit of update on that report yesterday that we said about Britain being the sick man of Europe. Molly Kingsley, who is she's written a book called The Accountability Deficit. She couldn't work out where this report had come from about the fact that everybody was ill because of tobacco and food and lack of exercise. So she did a bit of a deep dive into who had commissioned that report, and it was Pfizer and AstraZeneca were a big part of it, and she was saying she cannot understand why this report didn't contain mentions of some of the mRNA injuries from all of the drugs that were rolled out last year. Funny that.
And it's like if an MP made a speech in the Commons and was in the pay of, you'd have to declare an interest. Yeah. So why isn't that interest declared in that report?
Yeah, well spotted, Molly Kingsley. Right, it's been 10 years since the Scottish independence vote. First Minister of Scotland, John Swinney, is going to market with a speech shortly.
Well, that'll be thrilling.
Stay tuned for that. And a lot more interesting stuff as well. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Many happy memories, and 9 in 10 Brits say certain foods evoke feelings of childhood nostalgia, with the mousse-like powdered dessert, Angel Delight, the most loved. Joining us now...
I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, what, Angel Delight?
I'm surprised it's number one. Yes, very surprised. Well, to talk us through all of this is creator of the Crazy Sexy Food podcast, Hannah Harley-Young. Morning.
Hi. I've brought a selection of things that really define my childhood, particularly the Viennetta ice cream. And I have brought you some butterscotch Angel Delight.
Yay!
I'm going to expose myself live on camera and say that I've never tried Angel Delight.
Hannah?
I know. I don't know what that says about me.
I thought that was apple puree, actually. I'm so excited. Is it good?
Oh, my goodness.
Did I make it okay?
Oh, yeah. But to be fair, Hannah, it's not that hard to make.
Well, what is it, though? That's what's so funny about Angel Delight.
It's chemicals. It's just chemicals in a bag.
I mean, it's a load of additives, which, I mean, one thing that's also really interesting about all these nostalgic foods when you look at them is that a lot of things have been discontinued over the years.
Oh, dear.
So it makes you wonder, how did this one kind of get through the cracks?
Angel Delight came out number one, didn't it?
It did come out as number one. And also sort of in the top 5 was fish and chips, something I still eat today. Fish fingers, still a staple of my diet. Mr. Whippy, in that same survey, they said that 95% of people find that a taste from their childhood will take them back more than looking at a photo. And that's something that's really interesting for me, and it's the basis of everything that I do, and the reason really why I set up Crazy Sexy Food, or one of the reasons, should I say, was that I love this concept of memories of food. You know, I've interviewed hundreds of people over the past 5 years, and when I get to that question, you actually see their face relaxing, and there's something that it evokes emotion.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It is 10:48. It's Britain's News on GB News.
Go on.
Foreign Office is urging calm heads and de-escalation after hundreds of simultaneous explosions across Lebanon and parts of Syria. This is all to do with people's pagers. The most extraordinary, as Bev was saying, it's like James Bond. GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White's here. What's it got to do with the Foreign Office calling for calm head and... I mean, Israel won't take any notice of what the Foreign Office says.
Well, you could argue that perhaps, but they are very concerned about what this will do in terms of escalation in the Middle East. Of course they know that, and I think Hezbollah, for some considerable time, is not going to be in a position to do much of any consequence, really, in Israel. I think the wider concern, potentially, is we know there are Hezbollah operatives all around the world, you know, so not perhaps as capable as they were to launch attacks directly into Israel. Will we see attacks on Israeli interests or indeed even just Western interests in other countries. But this was, you're right, the most audacious attack that required clearly a very high level of planning and coordination, interrupting that supply line of these pagers.
But a major leak on the Hezbollah side, we regard as a terrorist organisation in this country, so does the EU, so does the United States, for the Israelis to be able to target individual Hezbollah operatives with these pagers and to get them.
Yes, I mean, any intelligence agency worth its salt, well, they have human resources or human assets, I should say, within the terrorist group, those that will be willing for a sum of money or whatever to tip them off on certain aspects. So clearly at some point they were told that Hezbollah had put in a bulk order for 5,000 of these pagers, and that followed the leader of Hezbollah ordering the fellow terrorists of this group, you know, not to use their mobile phones as much, go old school, get into pagers. So they put in this big order for 5,000 of these pagers. Israeli intelligence got to find out about this, intercepted them, very cleverly injecting these high explosives into the pagers. And people have said, oh, this was indiscriminate, you know, that a little girl has died. And that is terrible. But I would argue that this was a very discriminate attack because the people that had these pagers and were wearing these pagers were operatives and those connected to Hezbollah, this terrorist group.
Killers.
Absolutely.
And it's war.
And it's war. And actually, it's a lot less indiscriminate than a missile going into a crowded area in Gaza.
Which could get a hospital, which we know has happened. Mark, did we have any comprehension about how they managed to get... I mean, it's quite an operation to get 5,000, potentially 5,000 pages impregnated with explosives in this way. And did they all go off at the same time?
Pretty much within a short period of time, because clearly those behind this attack did not want people to suddenly realise that the pagers were exploding and then discarding the pagers. So it was pretty much simultaneous across Lebanon, but also other countries in the region. Syria, there were multiple explosions from Hezbollah operatives in that country. In Iran as well, we think there would have been a number of explosives too, explosions as well. What has happened is that the distribution of these pagers has been intercepted at some point. Now, the Taiwanese company that licenses them say they know nothing about it. Amazing. They licensed the manufacture of these particular pagers to a company in Budapest, Hungary.
Yeah, right.
They deny any knowledge, but it could have happened at any point in the shipping of these pagers out to Lebanon as well.
And the irony is that they went to pagers to avoid mobile phones, because mobile phones were easy to trace, and one Hezbollah operative commander was killed because they knew where he was, the Israelis, because of his phone.
Well, indeed, you know, that was a real concern that Hezbollah had about the hacking of phone systems, and that was why the order went out to go old school again and to get these pagers up. But of course, that provided the opportunity then for the Israelis to intercept the pagers. And now what you've got, of course, is the communication system for this terrorist group in absolute tatters. They don't trust their mobile phones. Their pager system is now gone. So what do they do in order to coordinate their attacks? It'll be fairly difficult for them to manage going forward, I would imagine.
You almost think, is it the kind of thing they can only get away with once?
Absolutely.
You know, is it one of those attacks that we will never see this again because these sorts of devices won't be used without being scanned or checked? They only needed...
Who's going to want to have a pager anywhere near them now?
They only needed to use about 2 ounces of explosives, didn't they, Mark, next to the lithium battery that was remotely triggered with, I guess, a remote operating switch? I don't understand enough about the technology to explain.
They will have been designed, I mean, it's very sophisticated, obviously, but, you know, very ingenious and clever. Operated by a message sent by whoever planted the explosives, send a message to the pager, they bleep, people take them out of their pocket to have a look at them, and they explode.
They lose their hand or their head.
Right, Mark, thank you so much. We're going to play you in just a minute the statement from the woman who was incorrectly arrested after the stabbing incident after the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Another sunny afternoon to come for many of us once this early cloud lifts and clears. But it will be a fairly breezy day, particularly across southern areas, as we do have an onshore breeze from the North Sea. That's thanks to this area of high pressure, which is bringing that fine weather we're seeing at the moment, but also an easterly breeze. And that breeze will be quite brisk, actually, particularly across southeastern areas close to the Channel, and also across more western areas of southern England later on today, particularly to the western areas of high ground across parts of Wales. But elsewhere, clouds should clear up quite nicely as we head into this afternoon, and there will be more in the way of that September warmth to come. Perhaps still a bit of cloud lingering around the eastern coast of northern Scotland. We could still see some fog across some areas up here, but for most of us it will be a dry and fine day through the rest of today. And the winds will be lighter across more northern areas, so across the northwest it will chill off a little actually as we head into this evening. But whilst the sun's still up, temperatures in the high teens for many of us. Bit of cloud already starting to come in across northeastern areas of England, parts of East Anglia and the southeast this evening, and that cloud will probably be a bit more extensive tonight compared to recent nights across many eastern areas of England as well as Scotland. So it will probably be quite a cloudy night across these eastern areas. Across the west, though, another clear and starry night to come. And with clearer skies and light winds across northwestern areas, temperatures could dip down close to zero, but for most of us, a fairly mild night for the time of year as that brisk breeze continues across more southern areas. So another pretty breezy day to come across the south tomorrow. And as I said, probably a little bit of a cloudier start. The cloud will last just that much longer, I think, through Thursday, lingering more so across eastern coasts of northern England as well as Scotland through more of the day. But further west, plenty more sunshine to come through the day. And in the sunshine, still temperatures reaching the mid-20s. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is your chance.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Britain I grew up was the most peaceful, gentle society that has ever existed. That has been destroyed.
Opinion polls show immigration is the #1 concern to the British public.
Are you proud to be British?
Yeah, I'm ever so proud.
My name is Stephen Edgington, and in this documentary, I want to find out how Britain became a nation of immigrants. Immigration, the Truth. Available from the 19th of September at gbnews.com.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
11 a.m. on Wednesday, the 18th of September, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So breaking this morning, Post Office boss Nick Reed will step down next year after a turbulent tenure marked by the Horizon IT scandal.
And they still haven't got their compensation, those postmasters. And breaking news this morning, Bernie Spoforth, who was arrested for sharing the incorrect name of the Southport stabbing suspect online, has spoken out.
So to those who celebrated my arrest, don't enjoy it too much.
because it could easily happen to you. And the difference between us is that I would fight for you.
Police have announced no further action against Bernie. Now, in an attempt to tackle the recruitment crisis in schools, teachers will be allowed to work from home if they're marking, reading and lesson planning. But what will that mean for the children?
And not stopping the boats. Guess what? The Prime Minister's new borders chief, he was only named this week, has admitted smashing the gangs isn't going to be enough and they need a deterrent to reduce the channel crossings. I thought we had one. It's called Rwanda.
And today marks 10 years since the Scottish independence referendum. We will find out whether there is still an appetite for another vote, or is that idea all over?
And where's Nicola Sturgeon now?
Well, still being investigated.
She is, yeah.
That post office resignation.
Amazing.
You know, I just get a little bit tired these days of people who might be in trouble, maybe, for things that have happened, just stepping aside, getting out before the proverbial hits the fan.
And we need to be told the payoff.
Yes.
How big will the payoff be? Because we have to remember the post office scandal is one of the biggest, greatest corporate scandals in our lifetime, in my view. People willfully taken to court, charged with offences, and people in the post office knew it was not possible. They committed those offences.
Right, that and a lot more between now and midday. First, the very latest news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. It's just after 11 o'clock. The top story from the newsroom this morning. The Foreign Office is urging calm heads and de-escalation. That's after hundreds of simultaneous explosions across Lebanon and parts of Syria yesterday. 9 people were killed and thousands injured in what's believed to have been a remote attack targeting communications devices. Hezbollah militants and the Iranian ambassador were among those wounded as tensions between Israel and the militant group continue to rise. The Foreign Office is now urging British citizens in Lebanon to leave, warning they could be trapped in a war zone. Development Minister Annalise Dodds says the UK will be supporting civilians impacted in the explosions.
Like many others, I woke up this morning to the news and reports of developments in Lebanon, and this clearly is an awful situation. I'm very concerned to hear about the reports of civilian casualties. Clearly, I don't know all of the details of this. As I say, we woke up to this news, but the UK will be working with, particularly with our humanitarian partners in the region.
Well, turning to news in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, we're just hearing that a massive blast has rocked Russia's Tver region overnight after a Ukrainian drone strike hit a major ammunition depot, forcing a mass evacuation of a town there. Video you can see here on the screen shows the fireball lighting up the night sky with explosions, while NASA also says it detected intense heat over a 14-square-kilometre area. Local officials confirmed the blast, but details at this stage are still limited, with the media there under military censorship. A pro-Russian blogger, though, claimed everything that can burn is already burning, they say, but no casualties were reported. Ukraine's security service says the strike destroyed missiles and artillery shells, though Kyiv has yet to officially comment. Here, the Post Office boss Nick Reed will step down next year after a turbulent tenure marked by the Horizon IT scandal. Reed called it a great privilege to lead through extraordinarily challenging times for the Post Office and for postmasters. He took the helm in 2019 after the controversial departure of Paula Venables, who faced backlash over her handling of that Horizon IT crisis. Mr Reed's departure follows criticism of him from MPs and his exoneration from misconduct allegations earlier this year. The company, though, says the effort to support postmasters and to achieve justice is ongoing. Inflation has remained above the 2% target, unchanged at 2.2% last month, with new data out this morning. Prices in hospitality, holidays and hotels are driving inflation, with inflation in the services sector specifically up 5.6% in August. Treasury Chief Darren Jones says years of sky-high inflation continues to put strain on British families, despite the slower rise. He added the government is determined to fix the foundations of the economy to ease the pressure on households, though experts believe the figures point to the Bank of England keeping interest rates at 5% tomorrow. Former Scottish First Minister Alex Salmond says every nation deserves a second chance on the 10th anniversary of Scotland's failed independence bid. He's predicting the country will be independent within the next decade. Reflecting on the 2014 campaign, though, he's admitted mistakes in its final weeks, but doubts that a different strategy would have changed the outcome. Since that vote, support for independence has remained largely static, frustrating many, including Salmond, who blames the current Scottish government for a lack of action. He insists the push for independence must accelerate, as he says Scotland doesn't have time on its hands. Ban the IRGC, that's the call from Robert Jenrick, as he argues the Iranian Revolutionary Guard should be labelled as a terrorist group. The Conservative leadership candidate wrote in the Daily Telegraph, saying Labour had once promised to take action but has failed to deliver. Jenrick argues the IRGC is the world's chief sponsor of terror and that cracking down on it would help tackle affiliated groups. Foreign Secretary David Lammy has introduced sanctions against some linked to the IRGC but hasn't moved to prescribe it as a terrorist organisation. The public inquiry into the crimes of convicted child serial killer nurse Lucy Letby is continuing today, with the parents of some of her victims giving evidence. The investigation is scrutinising how Letby, now serving 15 life sentences, was able to murder 7 babies and injure 7 more while she worked as a nurse at the Countess of Chester Hospital. The mother of child D told the inquiry yesterday that having CCTV in her daughter's hospital nursery room could have prevented her murder. The inquiry is now looking into whether all neonatal units in England should install CCTV. Well, our North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper is in Liverpool for us, where that inquiry is taking place today.
This morning we are expecting to continue with evidence from parents. We're expecting to hear from the mother of child E and child F, twin boys who were both attacked by Letby. Child E was murdered via an injection of air, and child F, it was an attempted murder charge, poisoning with insulin. He did survive. Now, this morning we're unable to go into Liverpool Town Hall, into the inquiry itself, partially because of concerns around anonymity, but also, as I'm sure our viewers can understand, it must be incredibly difficult for those parents to stand up and to share the impacts that this has had on them and the lives of their wider families.
Sophie Reaper there for us in Liverpool. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'll be back with you in just over half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK with Bev and Andrew.
So we'll know what you think, of course. Send us your views, post your comments. You visit, of course, gbnews.com/your-say.
So do you remember the name Bernie Spofford? She's at Artemis Now on X or Twitter. Well, she hit the headlines about 5 weeks ago. She copy and pasted subsequently proved incorrect facts about the Southport murderer at the Swift dance class. She was one of 5,000 people who did that. She was arrested, held without charge for 36 hours, banned from using social media for the past 3 weeks. Well, she's been released, and early this morning she put out this video. Here it is.
So on the 8th of August, the police turned up, mob-handed, 5 of them, 3 police cars and a prison van. And instead of a simple voluntary interview, they searched me, arrested me and held me for 36 hours in a concrete cell with a concrete bed, like a terrorist. They held me even though I told them that the evidence they needed had already been found by data experts. I explained my post was political, as almost all of my posts are, and my post was aimed at the government and its failing policies. I had not and would not make something up. But perhaps the authorities and the activists didn't actually care about the truth. They just wanted me punished as an example to you. Finally, I was released on bail. There really was nothing to take to magistrates and nothing to charge me with, but it didn't end there. Because my bail conditions included that I couldn't engage on social media, they didn't want me to speak to you about anything at all. Which meant I couldn't tell you of the damage done to me by those reporters and activists, and that it had been so complete I couldn't leave my house. That reporters were lying in wait for me in my garden, and that every day I had hate mail. I had nothing to gain from making something like that up, but others did gain. Journalists gained their clicks, my detractors gained my silence, and the authorities gained the silencing of you, because so many of you were afraid to speak. So to those who celebrated my arrest, don't enjoy it too much, because it could easily happen to you, and the difference between us is that I would fight for you. And for all those who stood up for me and did fight for me, thank you.
Now, a lot of you won't know Bernie. She's very, very powerful, very popular online. That video on her own account has been watched 185,000 times now. It's only been online for an hour and a half. And she just really makes the point on that this is about free speech, and it is about the fact that even though she got some information wrong on speculation at that point as to who had committed those atrocities on those children at the Taylor Swift dance class, that response, I think we can all agree, was disproportionate.
Yeah, of course it was. And we have to contrast it with what we saw in the courts this week when Hugh Edwards walked free from court, in my view, suspended jail sentence of 6 months. We now learn that in the last 9 months, 27 paedophiles who watched over 1 million images of children, some as young as 7, 6, younger, some, in fact, looking at images of 2-year-olds. Being sexually exploited. Not one of those paedophiles went to prison. Yet Bernie was banged up in a police cell
36 hours.
36 hours.
She's had all the devices seized. She's only just got all of her devices back. There was nothing to see.
Must have been terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying. She was in a state. I know Bernadette Spofford. I followed her on social media because she's been a very diligent commentator. And it does show that you have to think before you post information that might be wrong.
Yeah.
But the idea that she could have somehow incited those riots with a tweet that was up for 2 hours is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, the rioters were going to happen come what may.
Of course they were.
And also, I still think it's astonishing, actually. Parliament came back after the summer recess. There has been no debate about those riots. None whatsoever. And it was the most serious civil discontent on our streets since the London riots in 2011, when there was an emergency debate in the Commons.
Well, you know what? Bernie's case, for me, is about this government, particularly this Labour government, because they clamped down so hard on that dissent. They silenced anybody that wanted to speak out about that as far right, about the maelstrom of social issues that was whipped up in the aftermath of those stabbings in Southport. And a lot of people who do consider themselves to be on the right were silenced by the arrest of Bernie Spofford. They did quieten down. Everybody was frightened. Everyone was careful to think that Keir Starmer's police force was going to knock at your door because you said something online that might be considered to be deliberately posting disinformation liable to incite violence and more than trivial harm, which is what they thought she had done. There's also a very good article online under the Law or Fiction Twitter account, which basically explains from a legal point of view why there was never a legal basis to have her arrested. So it's a really interesting case, a real moral of our time.
Now, moving on, the Princess of Wales, we love her, don't we? She's back at work. She had an early years meeting at Windsor Castle yesterday afternoon, her first official meeting that's been listed in the Court Circular, which is the official record of royal engagements. And that's the first time she's been in the Court Circular since her cancer treatment started earlier this year.
Let's speak to royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams, as we showed you then a little bit more of that recent video. Richard announcing that she was finishing her chemotherapy treatment. The palace have been very clear. This does not mean that she is completely well and that life will return to normal. But yesterday was a glimpse of what will hopefully be normality returning.
No, you're absolutely right. It was indeed, and it's in the Court Circular, and it shows part of what is undoubtedly a progression, Trooping the Colour, Wimbledon, and now this meeting, because she's devoted to the early years project. She's called it her life's work. And clearly this, as you say, is a step in the right direction. But yes, everything with care and concentrating on being cancer-free, as she said in the video message.
There's still a debate, Richard, about the video she released. I was asked about by Bev. I was at the TUC conference down in Brighton, and I'd only really caught a glimpse of it, and now I've watched it properly. I think I'm still rather uneasy about it. Was it a little bit too glitzy and Hollywoody?
Well, I think that, I mean, there's a balance to be had here. On the one hand, that it's getting a message across to certainly to young people. I think that was the priority. And that meant that it was packaged. I was so moved originally when she told us that she was undergoing preventative chemotherapy.
Yeah.
A very, very different approach. And of course, there's no doubt with the slow motion, with the music and so forth. I mean, it was done deliberately and done for a purpose. And that purpose was to spread the word. And if that helps to spread the word about this malignant disease, and do it worldwide. So it was very easily accessible. I look at it in those terms, my own feelings. I see your point, of course, because this is a certain amount of slick packaging, but it's not meant in any sense as any form of disrespect. I think it's just depending on who you're targeting and who you want to get.
I suppose I also, Richard, sign they're doing things their way.
Well, I think, I mean, it's a change. This is completely new. It's totally unprecedented, obviously, to see the Prince and Princess of Wales so intimately. And there's no question, I mean, it has caused a certain amount of debate. And yes, I've heard and read articles that agree with your point of view. I mean, things do evolve. The royals have never projected themselves like this before, and so it is done for a purpose. On the other hand, I mean, you could argue the royal family in the 1960s, that was unique, and that was locked away. As far as I know, it still is, because it's considered so intrusive. So it's a question of getting the balance, and this is a very difficult time, of course, for the royal family, especially with two senior members, as you know, suffering from cancer, and hopefully things are going in the right direction.
They're on a bit of a sort of a PR win at the moment, William and Catherine, which I know is not the intention when you're recovering from cancer. But in terms of the popularity with the British public, somebody who is playing a part in that as well is James Middleton, so Catherine's brother, who's done some interviews with the press saying how great his sisters have been for him. I quite like these insights into that sibling dynamic. Richard, how about you?
Well, I think the Middletons, you could say, perhaps the unsung heroes of them. We only saw, for example, Michael and Carol Middleton at Royal Ascot, and then very briefly, but you can just imagine what's happening behind the scenes. And yes, James has had a lot of publicity in the Daily Mail on this. The fact that there's obviously real assistance and backing, but done, unlike so many things in the royal family, done quietly, but absolutely pivotal, yes.
Yeah, OK. Great to see you, Richard. Thank you very much, Richard.
And, of course, Kate Middleton's parents were in that video, of course, because they are a very, very important part of the family setup.
Yeah.
I interviewed Pippa Middleton. She's once when I was on the Mail.
Oh,
She's incredibly nice.
Was she?
She'd done a cookery book for charity. Very cautious.
Yeah,
I couldn't even get her to say, is your sister's favourite recipe in this book?
But
she wouldn't even say that.
But that's why one of the reasons why I think Catherine has been well looked after, and the grandchildren and the children, because of that relationship with her parents, and they're more protecting her.
Very protective of her, and quite right too.
Right, still to come, we're going to be discussing that Ed Davey moment as he closed out the Lib Dem conference yesterday. You will like it, Andrew.
Oh, stop.
It involves an ABBA classic. I might get you singing.
Well, I could sing it better than he did.
Ooh, microphones at dawn. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
With record temperatures expected this week, how do zoos keep their cooler creatures cold? Well, at Yorkshire Wildlife Park, the polar bears are enjoying a vegetable ice block.
Polar bears, they do have quite a variety of different temperatures that they naturally do find. Once they're moving off these polar ice caps, they are in the likes of down in the areas of Canada, Hudson Bay. Naturally, they were finding polar bears in 35-degree temperatures year upon year. So they are very much used to warm temperatures and heat waves as such. What you'll tend to find is they'll go for a good swim and then go for a snooze in the shade thereafter.
Not wanting to miss out, the sea lions are treated to a huge fish lolly.
In the hot weather, it's really important to give them ice because these guys, they don't drink salt water. These pools are actually saltwater pools. They actually drink fresh water. They've got 2 freshwater pools in their house, but again, being able to provide that in their outside enclosure is also really important. So offering them ice with their fish is not only enriching, but it's actually beneficial to their welfare as well.
Other animals like the lemurs will be basking in the sun, but also cooling down with frozen sweet potato.
So we've got 3 different species of lemur here. They come in all different shapes, colours, sizes, but they are native to Madagascar. Madagascar can get quite hot, understandably, so throughout the cold months here in Yorkshire, we do give them a nice heated house all year round, but especially making sure it's nice and warm in the winter for them. And it does mean that in the hot spells as well that we're able to keep our eyes on them and try and give them things that make them a bit more comfortable with that incoming hot weather as well.
The frozen food on offer here certainly has the seal of approval on what could be the hottest day of the year.
GB News, the People's Channel.
The Britain I grew up was the most peaceful, gentle society that has ever existed. That has been destroyed.
Opinion polls show immigration is the #1 concern to the British public.
Are you proud to be British?
Yeah, I'm ever so proud.
My name is Stephen Edgington, and in this documentary, I want to find out how Britain became a nation of immigrants. Immigration, the Truth. Available from the 19th of September at gbnews.com.
This is free. Take a chance on me. Leave me, let me go and be around. You got no place to go if you leave that.
Hello, friends.
What was that?
Just embarrassing.
Utterly disgraceful. I mean, they did very well. They've got a record number of MPs, haven't they?
Yeah, yeah.
But I reckon they've lost half the voters they ever gained by that pathetic, utterly pathetic charade.
Just if you were listening on the radio, that was Ed Davey leading a chorus of Lib Dem supporters and MPs at the Lib Dem party conference.
That was the closing. That was the closing. So you normally have a dramatic peroration in your speech. We had him singing badly, out of tune. ABBA, Take a Chance on Me.
It's not for me to bash the Liberal Democrats.
Yes, it is.
Well, OK, it is. But I have to say, Angela Rayner can cut some shapes. She can dance. Michael Gove, rubbish. Ed Davey, toe-curlingly, butt-clenchingly, tooth-grindingly, god-awful.
And you cannot sing. Cannot sing. But you see the people behind him. The people behind him were his front bench, or, you know, the bench. And honestly, not one of them said, I'm not doing this because I'm being made to look like a completely stupid fool.
They look like performers.
I'm a huge fan of ABBA. I mean, when you think, do you remember Theresa May coming on stage trying to dance the Dancing Queen?
The old jigging,
That was a disaster.
And in fact, odd enough, who was? I mean, when Yvette Cooper was going for the leadership, I came up with this song, Super Cooper.
Excellent. Super Cooper.
No wonder she didn't win, Steve.
But I was just wondering, so I actually wrote to ABBA's recording set, said, can you let me know whether we can actually sing this? And I got the reply back, said, but basically said, you cannot be serious.
No. Yeah, I'm sure. They're very conscious of their brand, ABBA, which is why it continues to flourish 50 years after the
Why won't they get a complaint about this? Because we know what happens in America. The minute a pop group finds that its records are being used by a politician they don't approve of, you get legal suits all over the place. So if I was honestly representing ABBA, I'd be on this like a shot and saying, we have never heard such a disgusting rendition of one of the great songs of all time.
The reason the Lib Dems did so well in the election and got 70-odd seats, was 72.
It's because they weren't the Tories.
72 seats is because they grabbed the attention and they grabbed the headlines because of Ed Davey doing quite silly, gimmicky things.
Yeah.
You've got 72 MPs now. You don't have to do gimmicky things anymore. Now is the time to just be a bit more
let's just remind people what the gimmicks were about. To attention. To distract attention, Stephen, from his woeful role in the post office scandal. Post office minister. The post office minister said to Mr. Bates,
I will not meet you.
Bates, I will not.
I'm too busy.
Meet you. And then after he left. He lost his seat in 2017. He lost his seat for a couple of years. He took on a very well-paid legal job with the law firm who the post office has been using to crush the postmasters.
To prosecute postmasters.
To prosecute them.
And
he's been
unbelievable.
About £275,000 from that law firm.
But when he's on that paddleboard up in Cumbria, and then just to make us laugh, he tossed himself off into the middle of this awful water in Cumbria. I hope to God he didn't inhale.
No.
Now then, should we talk about Instagram, Stephen? Giving parents more control over social media. How are they going to do it?
Well, in my experience, to be honest, the closest I've got to that generation is as a grandfather or sitting next to you. But the reality is you can't stop them.
You can't.
You've got to have a thing called parental control.
And they don't work.
And, parental control is what we need at every single aspect of our lives, particularly when it comes to this in Instagram. Look, people will spend their whole lives on this damn platform if they want to, but we can't technologically stop it. We have to the parents have to get involved.
What can they access on Instagram? Everything?
Everything. I mean, Instagram should also
be policing...
we're
both asking Jeff.
Because she's got children.
Well, they should be policing their own content on Instagram. So if something goes up which is inappropriate, then somebody should alert Instagram and they should take it down. And they are quite good at doing that. They're better probably than, say, Facebook is, because they have fewer users, I guess, at the moment, even though it's fundamentally the same company. But let me give you an example. So on iPhones, you can have a security setting. So we put time limits on for our kids. And the time limit will come up to my 13. You want to say, you've had enough time today, turn it off. And there's a button saying, do you want to override the time limit?
That's outrageous.
You just press
If you actually go onto BBC iPlayer, it says, play with parental lock, PG lock, yes or no.
Ridiculous.
Oh, it's a joke. It's tokenism.
So how many teenage kids are going to say, oh, yes, I'd actually quite like to have the parental guidelines lock on there?
So we then have to put another app on that you have to pay a monthly subscription to, which has extra things on there that mean you can limit stuff.
But you're going to know, Bev, you're going to know. If your daughter is spending hour after hour, you're going to know about it because you're a good parent.
Yeah.
And I think this is what the people who just are away, leave their kids on their own, who knows what they're geting up to.
And I'm afraid there's rather too many of those.
I'm afraid you're right.
Do you know what?
I have to say that seeps into every aspect of our society.
Ban smartphones for the under-16s. Ban them for the under-16s. It's the only way. There shouldn't be something in my house that I hate as much as I hate my teenagers' mobile phones.
Give them a brick phone until they're 16.
That's what.
At least you can get hold of them.
And it should be social disapproval. So if you go to a restaurant and somebody gets out a smartphone for a teenager, a 13, 12, 6, 7-year-old, everyone should be tutting and saying that.
But I agree with you. But I went to a restaurant the other day and you had to order your food on a QR code.
You should have walked out.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
Always.
Actually, do you know, I did.
Good for you.
Because I said, I'm sorry, I'm simply not prepared to order this food. And this way, I want to see the menu, and I want to have somebody come and say, what's this like, what's that like?
You want to ask them, what are the vegetables like, what's the wine? It's outrageous.
I know. It's ridiculous.
Take away the human beings.
Yeah. And the QR code thing, it means that you just sit there and do that. People who come in and stand at the bar are not getting served. No. Because all the people behind the bar are dealing with drinks and food that people have ordered on their QR code. It's ludicrous.
I don't even know how you do it.
No, I don't either.
Well, QR is supposed to stand for quick response. It ain't.
I agree. The polar opposite. Right, talking of food, should we talk about Tesco's, Mike, on healthy item in the bagging area? What are they doing with their club card system?
Well, the boss of Tesco's, and I'm a huge fan of Tesco's because it was really came to prominence under Sir Terence Leahy. He made it brilliant, you know. When Sir Terence Leahy was in charge, £1 in every £7 spent on the high street was spent in Tesco's. That's how dominant they were. And he's also an Everton fan, so I met him in the...
Say no more.
The director
of Tony Blair.
But yeah, exactly. But nevertheless, it was this Tesco club card which really gave Tesco the oomph in the high street. It was his idea, and he put it forward. But what the current boss is, a guy called Ken Murphy, he's saying, I can see the information that's gathered on your club card, which records what you're buying. I can see it nudging you, saying, look, I've noticed over time that in your shopping basket, your sodium salt content is 250% of daily recommended allowance. So it's actually becoming a spy.
But out of my life.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're not doing this for altruistic reasons, Mark.
No.
They want you then to divert you to... Oh, if you go to the healthy food section, there'll be a lasagna that's got less salt in. It'll be more expensive.
Or organic foods, which, of course, are very much more expensive.
This is every... I've got one of these Amazon premium accounts, because, you know, I order stuff from Amazon. And my wife hasn't, so she wanted to actually buy some underwear from Amazon and using my premium thing, which was quite... And immediately, I've obviously triggered some algorithm that I'm interested in ladies' underwear.
You probably are.
That's your story.
I'm sorry.
That's 36 seconds.
Only from the perspective of nostalgia.
This is outrageous.
This is Mr. Murphy says. I expect artificial intelligence, which Steve's just been talking about, will be used to help customers make healthier choices by alerting them when they go over their daily recommended allowance.
So this will be pinging while you're doing your shopping?
Well, I'm not sure.
They refuse to let you buy a donut.
Yeah, but I think it emphasises the point you've just made. Yeah. This is supermarkets trying to guide you in what you should buy.
To buy something more expensive.
For one reason or another, isn't it?
There's only one reason, come on.
To make more money.
Yeah,
it's not altruistic, is it? It's not for the health of... The health of the nation might be a convenient side...
An excuse.
You know, just to
there's also a thing in the paper today about we shouldn't be able to buy a good, honest British pint of beer. We should be buying a 2/3 of a pint of beer.
At the same price, presumably.
Good, surely not.
Right, never enough time, gentlemen. We've got to go.
Time, gentlemen, please.
Time, gentlemen, please.
2/3 of a pint all round.
Here is the news with Sam.
Very good morning to you. It's just after 11:30, a roundup of the stories making the news this morning, and leaders in the Middle East are accusing Israel of pushing the whole region to the brink of war. That's as the death toll from hundreds of simultaneous explosions across Lebanon and parts of Syria has now, we understand, risen to 12, and that does include, sadly, 2 children. The Hezbollah terrorist group and the Lebanese government have accused Israel for what is believed to have been a remote attack targeting handheld communications devices. Here, meanwhile, the Foreign Office is urging British citizens in Lebanon to leave, warning they could be trapped in a war zone. And Development Minister Annalise Dodds says the UK will be supporting civilians who were impacted in those explosions.
Like many others, I woke up this morning to the news and reports of developments in Lebanon, and this clearly is an awful situation. I'm very concerned to hear about the reports of civilian casualties. Clearly, I don't know all of the details of this. As I say, we woke up to this news, but the UK will be working with, particularly with our humanitarian partners in the region.
Annalise Dodds there. Well, we've heard today that a massive blast has rocked Russia's Tver region after a Ukrainian drone strike hit a major ammunition depot, forcing a mass evacuation in the area. Video you can see here shows the fireball lighting up the night sky with those explosions, while NASA also says it detected intense heat over a 14-square-kilometre area. Local officials confirmed the blast, though details at this stage are limited, with the media in the area under military censorship. But a pro-Russian blogger has claimed everything that can burn is, they say, already burning, but no casualties were reported. Ukraine's security services says the strike destroyed missiles and artillery shells, though Kyiv has yet to officially comment. Here, Post Office boss Nick Reed will step down next year after a turbulent tenure marked by the Horizon IT scandal. Reed has called it a great privilege to lead through extraordinarily challenging times for the Post Office and postmasters. He, of course, took the helm in 2019 after the controversial departure of Paula Venables, who faced backlash over her handling of the Horizon crisis. Mr Reid's departure follows criticism of him from MPs and his exoneration from misconduct allegations earlier this year. The company says the effort to support postmasters and to achieve justice is still ongoing. And the public inquiry into the crimes of convicted child serial killer nurse Lucy Letby is continuing today, with the parents of some of her victims giving evidence in Liverpool. The investigation is scrutinising how Letby, now serving 15 life sentences, was able to murder 7 babies and injure 7 more while she worked as a nurse at the Countess of Chester Hospital. The mother of child D told the inquiry yesterday that having CCTV in her daughter's hospital room could have prevented her murder. The inquiry is now looking into whether all neonatal units across England should install CCTV. Well, our reporter Sophie Reaper is in Liverpool for us, where that inquiry is taking place today.
This morning we are expecting to continue with evidence from parents. We're expecting to hear from the mother of child E and child F, twin boys who were both attacked by Letby. Child E was murdered via an injection of air, and child F, it was an attempted murder charge, poisoning with insulin. He did survive. Now, this morning we're unable to go into Liverpool Town Hall, into the inquiry itself, partially because of concerns around anonymity, but also, as I'm sure our viewers can understand, it must be incredibly difficult for those parents to stand up and to share the impacts that this has had on them and the lives of their wider families.
Sophie Reaper there for us in Liverpool. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'll be back with you for a full roundup at midday.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And before we hand back to Andrew and Bev, a quick snapshot of the markets this hour. The pound will buy you $1.3225 and €1.1875. The price of gold, £1,947.44 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,261 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here they are. That's all we need to say.
It's all you need to say. It happens every day.
It says on the screen, Tom and Emily.
That certainly does. It's Good Afternoon Britain coming up at midday.
We've got a lot to go at. Tom Tugendhat, I don't know if you've seen his letter. He's got in touch with the Attorney-General. He's put it on his Twitter for everyone to see. He thinks that the sentencing of Hugh Edwards was far too lenient.
Well, he's right.
So he's asking for a check-up on
and I hope, and I'm sure you guys will bring in. The Sun has done some really good stuff here about the number of paedophiles, the image, and who have not gone to prison.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's shocking.
Exactly. So it's just suspended sentence after suspended sentence after suspended sentence for people who, frankly, had a much longer history of offending than Hugh Edwards did. It's pretty extraordinary. This has lifted the lid on quite a lot.
That disgusting pervert who sold him the photographs, because they were sold.
Yeah.
He says that it was a gift, but he sold them effectively. He didn't go to prison either.
Yeah, how was he able to get out of prison?
So there were people with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of images who haven't gone to prison, which is extraordinary journalism from The Sun. But Tom Tugendhat is asking the Attorney-General to use a power that she has for the case to be heard again, for this review mechanism to kick in. Of course, this is what we saw in the case of the trial of Valdo Callocane, the Nottingham killer. The then Attorney General asked for that case to be reheard, although unfortunately it came back with the same result again. Perhaps it would be different in this case. We did hear a lot of the mitigation that Hugh Edwards' expensive lawyer was putting forward, was based on his mental state, that he was so mentally ill that he didn't know what he was doing, he doesn't remember it, and he wouldn't do it again.
The thing is, how can they lock him up if they didn't lock up the guy who sent him the pictures?
Well, review that.
So, review that
should
too.
Be reviewed too.
Review all of these as well.
Exactly.
That and much more with Emily and Tom from midday. Up next, though, we're going to be talking about this horrific story. You might have seen it in the papers. It was a mass rape. A woman who was raped by about 50 people after she was drugged by her husband. Unbelievable. She waived her right to anonymity. We'll tell you what happened. It's in France. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Another sunny afternoon to come for many of us once this early cloud lifts and clears. But it will be a fairly breezy day, particularly across southern areas, as we do have an onshore breeze from the North Sea. That's thanks to this area of high pressure, which is bringing that fine weather we're seeing at the moment, but also an easterly breeze. And that breeze will be quite brisk, actually, particularly across southeastern areas close to the Channel, and also across more western areas of southern England later on today, particularly to the western areas of high ground across parts of Wales. But elsewhere, clouds should clear up quite nicely as we head into this afternoon, and there will be more in the way of that September warmth to come. Perhaps still a bit of cloud lingering around the eastern coast of northern Scotland. We could still see some fog across some areas up here, but for most of us it will be a dry and fine day through the rest of today. And the winds will be lighter across more northern areas, so across the northwest it will chill off a little actually as we head into this evening. But whilst the sun's still up, temperatures in the high teens for many of us. Bit of cloud already starting to come in across northeastern areas of England, parts of East Anglia and the southeast this evening, and that cloud will probably be a bit more extensive tonight compared to recent nights across many eastern areas of England as well as Scotland. So it will probably be quite a cloudy night across these eastern areas. Across the west, though, another clear and starry night to come. And with clearer skies and light winds across northwestern areas, temperatures could dip down close to zero, but for most of us, a fairly mild night for the time of year as that brisk breeze continues across more southern areas. So another pretty breezy day to come across the south tomorrow. And as I said, probably a little bit of a cloudier start. The cloud will last just that much longer, I think, through Thursday, lingering more so across eastern coasts of northern England as well as Scotland through more of the day. But further west, plenty more sunshine to come through the day. And in the sunshine, still temperatures reaching the mid-20s. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. So this is a really shocking story. This is about a man in France who was accused of drugging his wife and letting at least 50 men rape her while she was sedated. And he's told a French court, I am a rapist.
So she waived her right to anonymity, and she's called Dominique Pellicot, and this is what she said. She was greeted at court by members of the public.
And of course, what is so unusual is because she's waived her anonymity, she's allowed this story to really have the oxygen of publicity to shine a light on the depravity of this situation. And I thought those pictures are very moving of the public greeting her there and giving her flowers.
It's not just that her husband should have been on trial. What about these terrible men who took part in it?
How is it possible to find that many men in one area who want to do that?
And the local mayor, for what it's worth, was interviewed a bloke and said, oh, it's not so serious, nobody was killed.
Oh. Well, let's talk to journalist and broadcaster Peter Allen, who is out in France. Good morning, Peter. It's been a big story here, but not, I imagine, as huge as it must be over in France. Front page story, because it's so unusual.
Absolutely. It's an absolutely horrific case. I've been following French court cases for many years, covering French court cases. Never seen anything like this. These are crimes that went on for at least 10 years. It all started with Dominique Pellicot, who is the main defendant. He's on trial with 50 others, attacking his wife at home. And then he says that he was bored in retirement, can you believe it? So he went online And he thought, well, if I can subdue my wife with drugs, slipping drugs into her meal, why can't other men do the same? So he went onto a chat room in France and recruited lots of different men from all types of society, ostensibly respectable men like him, who'd all had good jobs or were actually in employment, and he invited them round. And these horrific rapes took place over all these years. He was only caught in an unrelated matter. A few years ago, he was caught in his local supermarket taking photographs illicitly underneath women's skirts. He was arrested for that. The police found all these bestial videos and photographs of all these rapes going on for many, many years. Terrifying case.
And it was an incredibly brave decision of the wife, Peter, to waive her anonymity, because some people would just be so ashamed they wouldn't want anyone to know. But by going public, it's made this a worldwide story.
Absolutely right. Giselle Pellicot, she could have chosen to remain anonymous, as, of course, many rape victims are allowed to and do. But straight away she said, no, I want to go public, because, remember, if she did remain anonymous, so would the husband, because clearly if you identify the husband, everybody would know who the wife was. So that was a really brave decision, and certainly as journalists, I doubt we would have taken much interest at all if it had just been arranged for anonymous figures linked with these appalling crimes. However appalling, to give a case publicity, you do need live people that can be interviewed, who can talk about everything that's happened, and that's exactly what we've got. They've got 3 adult children as well. They've been hugely articulate and spoken about the whole ordeal. And again, that's one of the reasons this monstrous case is getting so much publicity.
Monstrous is the right word, Peter. So what happens to this monster husband? Has he been sentenced? And if not, what are we expecting to happen to him?
Well, it might sound incredible, Andrew, but he hasn't been sentenced. He has got about 3 months, 4 months of mitigation left. That's how the French system works. And one of the great criticisms of the French system is over domestic violence, between a man and wife especially. They are incredibly lenient. That is quite terrifying. I covered a case here in Paris a few years ago where a man who had literally beaten his partner to death in a hotel room, he was sentenced to a few years in prison. He was out within about 4 or 5 years. And of course, there's a lot of fear that that is going to be the same case with Dominique Pellicot. So he'll mitigate for the next 4 months, along with the other 50 defendants. Not all of them are proven rapists yet. We have to hear what the verdict is at the end of it all.
All right, Peter, we've run out of time. It's the most extraordinary case. Peter Allen there, very experienced broadcaster.
It's shattering, isn't it?
What I find amazing is she didn't know.
No, I know. Well,
she didn't know this was happening. She was having medical issues with sort of bruising and her hair was falling out as a side effect of these drugs, and she didn't know what had been happening to her.
Amazing.
Right, up next, it's been 10 years since the Scottish independence referendum. Whoopee! Happy birthday to the death of that particular ambition, I hope. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
More than half of people aged 50 and over feel happier from having a friendship, and 46% feel a sense of belonging too. Tomorrow is the start of Friendship Month. The Oddfellows, a non-profit friendly society that provides older adults with opportunities to create new friendships, is now inviting more people this September to join their local groups and expand their friendship circles through giving a taster activity at local community centres. We're joined now by Jane Nelson, who's the CEO of Oddfellows. Good morning, Jane. Thanks for joining us. As someone in my mid-30s, I've even noticed as well that my own friendship group has diminished over the years as kind of, you know, people get married and have kids and they kind of drift apart and don't make time for each other.
How important is it to have friends separate to your family? What benefit does that bring you?
As you do get older, you do lose friends for a variety of reasons. Either you lose touch or they have an illness or they pass away as you get older. The stats show that people love spending time with their friends. It always takes somebody, doesn't it? Somebody's got to make that first step to send a text to say, do you fancy meeting up for coffee, or do you fancy going to the pub, or whatever the arrangement's going to be. But sometimes somebody always has to make that first step and text or phone. And I think the other key thing is it usually tends to be the same person, but that doesn't matter as long as that connectivity is made, because that's what you need. You need the connectivity. If you think about when we were children, we'd go around the playground and say, will you be my friend? Well, we don't tend to do that as we get older. But be brave, look on Oddfellows website, see all the amazing events we've got on, go to see what's going on in your area, oddfellows.co.uk, or you can telephone 0800 028 1810, and our team will be more than happy to point them in the right direction of their local events, and there's so much going on, 300 going on.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Ten years since the Scottish referendum, when people voted, 45% of the nation voted to, well, 55 voted to stay as part of the Union.
That's right. It was a turnout of 84.6%. It was the highest recorded for an election or referendum since 1910.
So Scotland reporter Tony Maguire joins us now. Tony, it feels to me dead and buried, a bit like the political careers of Alex Salmond, who was the leader of the Scottish National Party at the time, and his successor, Nicola Sturgeon.
Good morning. Well, you know, I think that's certainly quite a popular perspective to look at it. You know, obviously I've been thinking a lot about this anniversary over the last week, you know, and thinking back to when I was covering it, you know, a decade ago, and the vibe back then and the atmosphere among both camps, I'll say, because, you know, there was an opportunity here for a new future from the Yes campaign and the Better Together. Well, they were looking for that opportunity to answer this question once and for all. And of course, on the 18th of September 2014, that question was asked and answered. But what we've seen really in the 10 years since that is various leaders, both, you know, of political parties and indeed from kind of Scottish culture as well, kind of keep this argument going. But as we've sort of seen over the last year, you know, the numbers that are attending along at independence rallies, first at, you know, at Bannockburn, there was quite a low turnout, we'll say, and then the other day in Glasgow. But, you know, there are various reasons for this, and part of that's because of the splintering of the movement, and that unity we saw back then is but a distant memory at this point.
OK, thank you, Tony. It is a distant memory at this point, isn't it? I think that's...
Remember the Queen was overheard saying, as she was talking to people on a walkabout, I do hope they'll be very careful. Something like that.
Yeah.
And we all knew what she meant.
Yeah.
And then David Cameron really irritated by saying she was purring with pleasure down the phone when they voted to stay in the Union.
Thank you all for getting in touch with us this morning. Lots of you saying how much you enjoy this show, which is wonderful. Terence, you and Andrew, Bev are an awesome team. Well, thank you.
Oh, that's very nice.
Well, we'll be back.
Some of us are more awesome than others.
We'll try to be awesome at 9:30 again tomorrow morning. But for now, here's Emily and Tom with Good Afternoon Britain.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, the Tory leadership hopeful, Tom Tugendhat, he's calling for a review into Hugh Edwards' sentence. He calls it unduly lenient. But why are so many paedophiles escaping jail?
And in Lebanon, we saw the pager explosion phenomenon yesterday. Why is the government here being so cautious about this targeted attack against terrorists? That to come and much more.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Another sunny afternoon to come for many of us once this early cloud lifts and clears, but it will be a fairly breezy day, particularly across southern areas, as we do have an onshore breeze from the North Sea. That's thanks to this area of high pressure, which is bringing that fine weather we're seeing at the moment, but also an easterly breeze. And that breeze will be quite brisk, actually, particularly across southeastern areas close to the Channel, and also across more western areas of southern England later on today, particularly to the western areas of high ground across parts of Wales. But elsewhere, clouds should clear up quite nicely as we head into this afternoon, and there will be more in the way of that September warmth to come. Perhaps still a bit of cloud lingering around the eastern coast of northern Scotland. We could still see some fog across some areas up here, but for most of us it will be a dry and fine day through the rest of today. And the winds will be lighter across more northern areas, so across the northwest it will chill off a little actually as we head into this evening, but whilst the sun's still up, temperatures in the high teens for many of us. Bit of cloud already starting to come in across northeastern areas of England, parts of East Anglia and the southeast this evening, and that cloud will probably be a bit more extensive tonight compared to recent nights across many eastern areas of England as well as Scotland. So it will probably be quite a cloudy night across these eastern areas. Across the west, though, another clear and starry night to come. And with clearer skies and light winds across northwestern areas, temperatures could dip down close to zero, but for most of us, a fairly mild night for the time of year as that brisk breeze continues across more southern areas. So another pretty breezy day to come across the south tomorrow. And as I said, probably a little bit of a cloudier start. The cloud will last just that much longer, I think, through Thursday, lingering more so across eastern coasts of northern England as well as Scotland through more of the day. But further west, plenty more sunshine to come through the day. And in the sunshine, still temperatures reaching the mid-20s. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at GBNews.